Good evening, everyone. Let me call to order this meeting of the West Palm Beach City Commission. Today is Tuesday, January 20th, 2026, and the time is 5 p.m. We will start this meeting off as we do all of our meetings with a moment of silence, please. Madam President, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let me go over the rules of civility and decorum which govern this body. In this meeting, officials shall be recognized by the chair and shall not interrupt the speaker. Public comment shall be addressed to the City Commission as a whole and not to any individual on the dais or in the audience. Displays of anger, rudeness, ridicule, impatience, lack of respect, and personal attacks are strictly prohibited. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, and similar demonstrations should not be permitted. Please govern yourself accordingly, as offenders may be removed from the meeting. Also, any person desiring to address the commission shall complete a comment card for each agenda item the person wishes to address, and that card shall include the person's full name, address, and the numbered agenda item. If the card is not completed in its entirety, the person will not be recognized. Thank you. Madam City Administrator, are there any additions, deletions, reorganization of the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Staff is requesting to pull item 9.2, which is a second reading of ordinance number 516226 for additional staff review. And we are not requesting that it be brought back at a date certain. We need to flesh out the additional review, and then we'll re-advertise it as is appropriate and schedule it for a future meeting.
Okay, fine. So we're pulling it. Do we need a motion to that effect? Okay, very good. Any other changes?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I am excited that we will begin our meeting with a very significant recognition. So tonight we are proud to recognize an exceptional achievement by the Cardinal Newman High School varsity football team. Any of you out there, you could clap, yell, something, yeah. So during the 2025 season, these student athletes demonstrated outstanding discipline, teamwork, and character, balancing championship-level competition with academic excellence. Under the leadership of head coach Jack Daniels and a dedicated coaching staff, the team earned a berth in the Florida High School Athletic Association Class 1A state championship game. On the state's biggest stage, they delivered and claimed the FHSAA Class 1A State Championship. This accomplishment reflects not only athletic excellence, but the values of leadership, preparation, and perseverance that make our community proud. The impact of this remarkable school reaches all the way to the dais, as I understand that two of our city commissioners proudly count Cardinal Newman as their alma mater, and the eldest son of our city administrator is also a graduate of Cardinal Newman. Right, Ms. Johnson?
That is correct.
You can smile on that, okay. So I, Keith A. James, Mayor of the City of West Palm Beach, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2026 as Cardinal Newman High School Varsity Football Team Month. So here to accept the proclamation on behalf of Cardinal Newman High School are President Charles Chuck Stembler, Principal Ed Curtin, Athletic Director and Football Coach Ryan Partridge, Head Football Coach Jack Daniels, Coach Brad Caldwell, Coach Bill Krawick, Team Captain Ignacio Iggy Zulaga, I like that nickname, Iggy, and varsity football players James Krawick and Cruz Caldwell. If you want to come down front, we're going to present you with the proclamation and take a picture. Congratulations again. You want us in front of Jared? You want us in front of them? Right here. And in front of them.
Okay, right here. It's good.
Wow, thank you all so much. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Great.
Absolutely.
Great. No, thank you so much. Thanks for the recognition. It's really, you know, we talk about obviously Jack and the team. It's a lot of teamwork, a lot of effort that goes into doing this. So we really do appreciate the recognition. So thanks for taking time. Go Crusaders. So awesome. Thank you.
And let the record reflect that I will be declaring this as a gift on my. Okay. All right, so we'll now turn to the consent calendar, items 7.1 through 7.7. Are there any questions, comments on consent? 7.1 through 7.7. All right. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda, item 7.1 to 7.7.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We will now turn to item 8.1. Resolution number 2626F to provide additional appropriations for the continuation of remediation, reconstruction, and upgrades to the police department building. Ms. Johnson?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Faye W. Johnson, City Administrator for the record. As the Mayor indicated, this item is related to a request of $13.4 million in additional appropriation for the continuation of the project. So before I get into the heart of the presentation, I want to thank the board for requesting a presentation on this matter. I think it is widely known that one of the things that I enjoy most about the job of being the city administrator is doing presentations on the budget. By way of our normal process for F resolutions, they are put on the consent agenda as a matter of course. When you look at the $6 million that the board approved related to this project in August of 2025, that was done by F resolution on the consent calendar without a presentation. If I look further back in October of 2024, a $26.5 million request came before the board for one-time funding by way of an F resolution on consent without a presentation. In between those two time frames, in November of 2023, an $11.4 million request came before this board via F resolution on consent without a presentation. So I am pleased to have an opportunity to do a full presentation on this request related to the $13.4 million, understanding the magnitude of the decision that lies before the board tonight. So with that, I want to delve into the presentation. So just by way of an overview of what is already known, our police building was built in 1995. It is a 31+ year old facility. It is the only police facility within the city's inventory. We operate solely out of that building by and large. We don't have police substations throughout the city. The facility is located on a full city block, Banyan Avenue and Clematis Street between Rosemary Avenue and Division Avenue. It is comprised of 3 stories with a basement and approximately 94,000+ square feet. The building is the home of 459 employees. Currently, we have 398 of that 459 that are filled positions. The other 61 are out in various stages of recruitment. Included within the umbrella of the building, there are a multitude of police operations that are broken down on the screen. Certainly we have the command staff, we have the patrol staff, a professional PD staff. There's a community outreach function within the building, as well as evidence and criminal investigation functions. And then our 911 dispatch function is within that building. It also contains the gun range, as well as a gymnasium. In terms of just a historical brief review or recap, the situation that we find ourselves in terms of the existing condition within the building is simply a legacy issue due to the fact that there was a historical lack of sufficient funding to maintain the building and to make needed repairs, insufficient funding to perform upgrades to the roof and the HVAC system. Because of that historical lack of sufficient funding, it resulted in an accumulation of roof leaks and water intrusion. So when did this current administration become aware of that? When you look at the fact that historically we didn't have a program in place, one of the priorities under the current administration was to establish a capital items one-time funding program, because under our budgeting system, we do not include general fund capital funding as an annual funding mechanism within the budget. When we recognize that, we then put in place the one-time funding program in fiscal year 23. That point is incredibly important when we look at what was happening at that time. The organization had just gone through the impact of the economic downturn from COVID-19. And as part of that, as did most municipalities, we had shortfalls within the general fund. We had just come off of the heels of an $11 million rebalance of the general fund, where we had to make $11 million in cuts in FY22 to rebalance the budget. And then on the heels of doing that, we came back in FY23 and set up one-time funding, which is predicated on unspent funds from the prior year. So in FY23, when we started this program, because of what we had gone through the prior year, we started it with a fairly small amount of about $6.5 million. We put a formal process in place. Once we have the annual financial report completed and we know how much discretionary fund balance we have, That process is typically completed in March, sometime early April. As part of the board's work sessions for mid-fiscal year, we allow departments to submit requests for capital funding, and then we review that and determine what could be supported, and then workshop with the board. The board then approves those items via F resolution, as I just articulated a couple of examples. So moving on, FY24 is when the roof and water damage concerns were brought to the attention of administration. While we had the one-time funding program first put in place in FY23, PD did not request, the then PD leadership did not request funding for roof and water damage. They brought that funding request forward in FY24. So we looked at doing an assessment of the scope of the needed work and then what it would cost. It was presented and was viewed as we had just maybe routine water leaks within the roof, knowing that when you have water leaks within the roof, typically that comes with intrusion of water that in a lot of cases result in some type of mold. So when we looked at the one-time funding plan, $700,000 is what was requested for what we thought was just a routine roof leak, water damage that we could repair within the scope of the $700,000. The $700,000 is not all of what PD requested and was approved for in FY24. The portion of what they requested is the $700,000. The total that they were approved for and requested was $1.2 million. The balance between the 1.2 and the 700 was for some operational equipment that they needed, such as drones and some other items. And I need to impress upon the board, as you all will recall, we have had a number of items that had to be replaced because we were operating on items that had expired, useful life, had not been replaced. So we had a myriad of different types of equipment, repairs that had not been done historically. So we were spreading money, one-time funding money across the operations to try to do some catch-up. So moving right along, in October of 2024, again by F resolution on the consent calendar, the board approved the $700,000 in funding to initiate the project that continues to take place as we speak. And maybe they got off just a little earlier than we did. So in FY25, we brought 3 experts on board to tackle this problem. Glaze Roofing Incorporated was contracted to perform the roof repairs. We brought on Belfour to perform the remediation work. I would like to highlight the fact that Belfour is a global leader in property restoration and remediation expert. We had procured them a year earlier through a competitive process. In the selection of Belfour, we also selected another company in the event that Belfour was tied up on one project. We had remediation that needed to be done on another project. We could pull in the second company to do that. We also, through Belfour, they brought on a third-party independent mold testing expert to provide ongoing air quality tests within the building. Currently, those tests are being done on a bi-weekly basis. In FY25, proceeding on through December, that's when the work started. That's when the work started on the $700,000. that the board had approved. It started with repairing the damaged areas of the roof and the remediation work that was related to that. That remediation was done in the area of the 911 dispatch operators. And as is typical with construction and remediation, when you start peeling back, you see hidden damage and other work that needs to be done. The mayor was intimately involved in terms of getting weekly and sometimes daily updates on what was being found as the work proceeded. And at one point, he simply said, we need to test the entire building to make certain that our officers, the staff that are working out of that building, that they are safe. And so when you expand the scope of a job, that comes with additional funding. The project started with a very, very defined scope. The mayor gave the direction, test the entire building. That's what started to be done. Employees, once they were notified or they realized testing was being done in the entire building, some of them came forward and said, in the past, there have been leaks in the building. We didn't bring in the level of experts. We think there's mold in this spot, there's mold in that spot. Test the whole building. The mayor said, don't continue doing here, there, hit or miss, test the entire building. So the scope of the project grew dramatically, and that comes with additional funding. That additional funding is what was requested and approved by the board in August of 2025. If you go back and look at the agenda item related to F Resolution 207-25, it lays out the additional $6 million that was needed to continue the remediation and reconstruction work that continues today. So we were at that point at $6.7 million the board had approved for this project. The major components that is included in the work is the tearing down of areas that need to be remediated, removing the mold, sanitizing the area, retesting air quality in the area to ensure that the remediation is successful, and then reconstructing the area. And that reconstruction includes rebuilding the walls. It's not where we find mold and you do a repair of that one section, and you certainly don't then just paint over it. It's bringing those walls down, then rebuilding them, replacing flooring, addressing the ceiling, and then doing a professional painting of the area. So it's pretty extensive work that is going on as part of this project. By way of a breakdown on that $6 million that the board approved, it included the $4.4 million for the restoration and remediation. $200,000 of that, small amount comparatively, was used for office furniture and equipment, and that is tables and space dividers, because as we had to move maybe large groups of employees, there was a need to then bring in office furniture. We have designated the former photographic center, 415 Clematis, to house employees that we have to move out of the building if we're doing the large-scale mold removal and reconstruction of their workspace. There was about $650,000 that related to flooring and electrical work, and then addressing the HVAC system. So in total, what has been paid out to date of the $6 million is the $4.8 million. With the work that has been going on since the $4.8 million, there is $1.1 million remaining of the $6 million that we have already encumbered because the work has been done. We think that if you look at the asterisk, we think that the total of what has been done in terms of work performed that remains to be paid is about 1.6 million. So there's an additional $500,000 or 500,000 that would be needed toward the work that has been done. Irregardless of what decision the board make tonight, I need an additional $500,000 to put toward the $6 million so that the work that has been done can be paid for in total. So by way of an update, with the work that has been done, about approximately 35% of the area needing remediation have been torn down, the mold has been removed, the area has been sanitized. The reconstructed areas, we project that they will be completed and ready for the staff to reoccupy those areas in about 4 to 6 weeks, about a month and a half if we were to stay on schedule. We are continuously doing the air quality tests. As I indicated, the tests that were done, the results from December tests, as well as early January, all of the air quality tests have come back in December and January 100% normal. So let's get to the requested $13.4 million that is before the board via this F resolution. As I indicated, 500,000 of that would go toward work that has already been completed, not yet paid as part of the 1.6 million.
Mayor, may I have a question about items that have just been covered before we get into the new. May I ask them now, or would you prefer to wait to the end?
I would prefer that we hear the entire presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to get through the presentation. I certainly will go back.
Make a note of the page number and something, we'll go back.
So in terms of that 13.4 million, 500,000 is needed as part of the 1.6 we're projecting to have to pay for work that has already been completed, not yet paid, encumbered. The remaining of that, we are estimating that about 8.9 million of that will go toward interior remediation and reconstruction. 1 million for HVAC refurbishments and upgrades, and then 3 million for exterior waterproofing. Those primarily relates to the windows. We have to seal all the windows. If you can visualize that building in your mind's eye, you know it's wrapped with windows. We need to seal all of those windows, take care of some outside drainage improvements, and then paint the facility. We're estimating that to be around $3 million. These are our estimates based on the recent assessment of the needed repairs of the areas. So if the 13.4 million is approved as is requested, we would proceed as follows. The remediation and reconstruction would continue. That ensures that PD operational continuity is efficient. They can maintain the efficient operational continuity on the basis that the remediation and the reconstruction continues. We think that we will be able to get this project completed by the end of this calendar year. We are projecting that we can complete this project, if all goes well, by the end of this calendar year, so about 12 months, January through December of 2026. If we meet that projected completion date, we would then wrap up the short-term staff relocations. We would shut down the temporary staff relocations at the photographic center, which is just housed or outfitted with basic tables and chairs. Pull tables out of Public Works facility, chairs. That's how the staff is working right now in the photographic center. We projected in January, once we shut down the photographic center, or simultaneously, that we would be able to complete the staff relocations and have them back into the building in January of 2027. That timeline may slip somewhat, but not by a great deal. And then the unanswered question, whether or not the $13.4 million is all that we would need. I wish I could tell you for certain that it is, but I can't, for this simple fact. Any construction project, particularly of existing facilities, as we experienced before, when you go behind the walls, there could always be unforeseen damage. We don't expect that it would be, if we need additional funding, that it would be to the tune of what we are requesting tonight. But I do have to plan that there may be additional costs related to unforeseen damages that we would need additional funding for. I do want to note that at the end of the day, whether it's the 12 months or whatever additional amount of time to complete this building, when it's fully remediated, we would have an extended useful life of that building between 20 and 30 years. And that is conditioned upon we continue to budget sufficiently to maintain the building. The roof comes with a 10-year warranty, so we get past the 10-year warranty period. If we have leaks in the building, we can't operate how we've done in the past by not funding maintenance on an annual basis, so that the leaks, if we were to have them 10 years, 11 years out, because then we're just repeating the sins of the past, and then we would not be able to stand behind a 20 to 30 year of extended life for that building. But we are budgeting and handling our finances significantly different from how we've done it in the past. So I have every reason to be confident that we will proceed on the path that we have established by annually budgeting for general repairs and maintenance of not just this building, but all city facilities. So we really are down to the dilemma before the board and the organization is one of time and money. So if we were to maintain the efficient police department operations, our most viable option and path forward is to utilize the $13.4 million toward completing the remediation and reconstruction work. But the board has to make that decision. If at the end of tonight, the board sees fit to go in a different direction and not approve the $13.4 million for the purpose requested, here is the path that we would proceed. We would halt the remediation and reconstruction work. So as of tomorrow, the work stops. That would adversely impact the operational continuity of our police operation. We would be looking at mothballing that building, close out all of the outstanding payments for the work done. I footnoted the additional $500,000 that would be needed from that $13.4 million. I think it is very important that this is not lost on the board. If the $13.4 million is not approved for what was requested, it still has to be utilized. If you don't approve it to finish the work, I need the board to then consider a motion for approval of that $13.4 million to pay the additional $500,000 and then the remaining $12.9 million to fund the long-term staff relocation. Because we're now moving from a temporary 12-month relocation to 12 months and beyond. And that point should not be lost. 12 months and beyond, and I'm going to later define why we can't answer how many months or years would be included in long-term. But immediately, what we would need to use funds for is to build out the photographic center, which we have employees sitting at tables in a chair during this interim period. We need to then build that space out, put up walls, put up doors, the electricity, lighting, then additional furniture. One facility we need to completely build out. The photographic center would be able to hold about 100 of the 358 some plus employees on board right now. We would need to find additional city facilities that we can then house more of the PD staff. There is one facility that we have identified as a potential site. I have employees working in that site. They would be relocated out of that space because PD would take priority. So now I have disrupted another staff to relocate them. I would take that space that they vacate and then build it out as an alternate space for PD or an additional space for PD. So that gives me two locations, photographic center, another site, which I'm not going to name at this point because I don't want to throw employees in a tailspin that they are about to be uprooted. That would be a cost to build out that space, then a cost on the back end to build out the space where the employees would be shifted to because that space is not built out. We don't have any police substations. We're talking about a department with 459 employees in a 96 square foot building. We don't have that sufficient space in our inventory. Separate and apart from the two spaces, there are specialized PD functions that cannot be set up in the photographic center in the unidentified designated space. We would have to find, by either now disrupting other operations and move them out, to set up the specialized PD functions. Most likely we would have to rent commercial space because we cannot put the organization in a situation where we have now 2, 3, and maybe 4 operations that are being displaced because we got to create space for PD. We got to have an operating police department. We have to. That's not optional. That's not a choice. We have to have it. That's going to require, more than likely, additional funding. So while it may not be comfortable to know how much additional funding we would need if we spend the $13.4 million on the remediation, it's going to be just as uncomfortable to not know how much additional funding we're going to need if we go down a different path. Additional funding may be on the table. The best option from our vantage point is to put it toward the remediation to get PD back into a remediated building, to cause the least disruption, not only to PD, but to some of the other staff operations. So again, we back to a time and money dilemma. The length of the long-term staff relocations, that's contingent on the time frame that it takes the future board and administration to plan, finance, and build a new PD facility. Whether it's a new headquarters with a couple of substations or to replicate what we currently have. But that takes planning, it takes money, and it takes time to construct. So just by way of a couple of other facilities that we've gone through, if you look at the 2020 park bond improvement projects, that process started in fiscal year 16, the planning of it. The completion in terms of construction, when I pulled out two projects as an example, Gaines Park and Coleman Park. Talking about a 10-year process from the point of planning it to the completion of the construction of those two facilities. And they're not on the scale of what we have for PD. And so while we have to give some allowance for COVID and how it impacted construction and all, so if we shave off 5 of those 10 years, you're talking 5 years. And I think that is overly optimistic to plan, finance, and build whatever the future PD building or facilities will look like. As we speak, we don't have the money to build a new building. But if by some chance we identified a benefactor, if someone walks through those doors right now and come to that podium and commit to building a police building, money is not an object. You would not have them within that building any sooner than 3 years. What do we do with them in the interim? And that is with a benefactor financing the entire building. The city is in a different position. We have to come up with the money. We don't have it in the bank. So you have to have time to identify funding sources and then plan out what the building will be, which will guide how much money we need. We've done it time and time again. If you look at the Joint Public Safety Training Facility, an 8 fiscal year process that began in fiscal year 19, is projected to get under construction in fiscal year 27. The construction is going to take probably 2 years out from fiscal year 27. Facilities have to be planned, they have to be financed, and then you go to construction. We can't put a building, an RFP on the street to construct any facility until we have the money. We can't even shortcut the process by putting an RFP on the street and then we come up with the money. We have to have identified how we're going to finance facilities or any type of work that we do. We have to have the money in the budget when we go out to an RFP. This is a standard process. It's nothing new. So I want to just close with some of the key questions from the commissioners. We sent out the questions and the answers. One of the questions was, how many more useful years will we get out of the building? As I articulated, if it's maintained, 20 to 30 more useful years. Secondly, would we still be spending these funds if we knew we were going to build a backup police facility, a substation in the near future? Unequivocally, yes, because we have to have somewhere to put our PD staff in the interim. We have to. Third question, are there plans to sell the land the police building sits on? There's no plans under the current administration. The reason we have come before the board for the $700,000, the $6 million, and now the additional $13.4 million is to fully remediate the building and get them back into it. We would not be presenting the kind of request for funding to the board if there was a plan to then sell it. That doesn't stand to reason. We would not be doing that. Fourth question, are there plans to swap the land the police building sits on? No. However, in 2023, administration, and it was the mayor in particular, he was approached about a potential public-private partnership to swap the PD building land with some property north of Banyan. The mayor made it clear that he was only interested in doing that if the swap came with them building a police building. We didn't have the money back in 2023. We don't have the money as I stand here tonight in 2026. So we can't be considering a land swap that doesn't include the construction of the building if we don't have the money to finance it. So that deal fell through, and there have been no further discussions about a land swap, although it seems to have taken a life on its own. I need to put it to bed tonight. There is no discussion about a land swap. Let's put it to bed. So with that, board, I am requesting your approval of Resolution 26-26F to provide the $13.4 million in additional appropriations for continuation of a remediation reconstruction of our police building. I'm happy to take questions from the board. After those questions are addressed, I am going to ask Assistant City Administrator Jose Rodriguez to join me at the podium. He is administration's liaison on the ground overseeing the project. He's intimately involved in the work that's being done, coordinating it. I am also going to ask our police chief, Chief Araujo, if he would join me at the other podium. The chief is the subject matter expert on the police operations. He is also well-versed in this type of project through his experience at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. And with that, Mayor, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions from the board.
Thank you for that very thorough presentation. I know we do have some questions, and so we'll begin with President Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. Was the chief going to make a comment or just be available for answers? Because I'd love to hear from him if he's going to make a statement first.
Well, you said you wanted questions on the presentation, no?
Well, now that everything has been presented, I mean, I'd love to hear from the chief.
Before you ask questions?
Sure.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. We have a plan. It's been executed hand in glove with the city. I'm very concerned about continuity of service. We have continuity of service. And in my opinion, this plan that we have in place moving forward is the best plan. As the city administrator eloquently put it together, if we don't go this route, it could cause a problem for operations. So again, not that you're asking me for my recommendation, but my professional opinion, the best I can give you is let's proceed as we're going. We do have a plan, and that building is plenty big for us.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. Thank you, Administrator Johnson, for the extremely thorough presentation. Thank you, Chief, for your comments, and to you and Assistant Administrator Jose Luis for the tour on Friday. It was extremely helpful. And Administrator Johnson, while I appreciate you pointing out the times that we have approved dollars on consent, I think that as you have illustrated in this presentation today, this is extremely important. I think that all of us take not only the health and safety of our city, our residents and our stakeholders very seriously, but also of our employees. And I think this is of utmost importance of our attention and decision-making today. I also wanted to comment that I appreciate your commitment and this administration's commitment to the maintenance of this building, as well as any city-operated building, as maybe as much attention needed hasn't been given in the past, which is why we're in today's predicament. At the agenda review meeting, where I know we had a lengthy dialogue on this as well, one of the questions that I was asking, I now have an answer to, but I'm just going to go through my thought process on that in this public forum. One of the questions I was asking, as I have heard many in the public ask as well, is this 13.4 plus the 6, is nearing $20 million. And could that $20 million be better used on another building? And thank you so much for going through the detail of pointing out and outlining, if we did something else, we would need to find a temporary location for our officers, and it would cost just as much, if not more. And so I appreciate that detail and that answer to that question. The next question that I had was related to the timing of if we wanted to look at other options and if we want to plan for the future of our police department and our public safety. And I appreciate the comparison that you provided of the 10-year process that it took for the Gaines and Coleman Park projects, and there was another project, the training facility, that is anticipated to take now 8 years. And so I have a number of questions that relate to the first part of your presentation, but I'm just going to get to the bigger picture item, which is, so you have made the case, and I do feel comfortable with the amount here, because we would be spending this amount regardless if we moved or not, because we would need to find a suitable place for continuity of services. However, what I was also looking for is being able to have a discussion on the future of our police department services. And maybe that's not for today, and that's for a future discussion, is do we need to spend all of this money if we were going to move in 5 or 10 years? I will say, after I got the tour with the chief, and Chief, thank you for being very candid in that tour and being very open. I got to see all of the places that were checked for mold and all of the walls that came down. And you answered me very clearly that the answer is yes, we would need to spend all of this funds. And so I'm seeing head nodding from both of you, that I just want to make sure that I have a clear understanding based on the information that was provided to us at agenda review, this presentation, and the tour. Do I have it? Is what I described the clear understanding of what you've conveyed?
Yes.
I'm going to just repeat 2 things. Hypothetically, someone walks through the door, comes to the podium, make a commitment to fund a new PD facility where money is not an object. It would take probably, best case scenario, 3 years, and I think that's being overly optimistic. We need to have the $13.4 million to finish the work, to put the staff in during that 3 overly optimistic period. Unequivocally, if we were to do a 5-year outlook, we need to spend the money to remediate that building or finish the remediation, because we have to have somewhere to put PD during that 5-year period. I am clearly and unequivocally saying that irregardless of how short of a time frame we could build a new building or how long of a time frame. We need to spend the $13.4 million to complete that work because we have to have somewhere to put PD in. And I understand the pressing need or desire to go through a strategic plan, space planning, and all of that. But if we look at it in the context of completing the remediation work and having an additional 20 and 30 years in that building, the pressure off of the next mayor administration to then plan it's off. You have a long runway to go through whatever type of strategic planning process that we need to undertake to be able to decide as a body, as an organization, what is the future facility of PD going to be, and then how are we going to fund it? I'm going to just make one other point, and then I'll turn it back over to the board. If you look at the examples that I put up on the Gaines Park, Coleman Park, and then the joint training facility, there were a combination of funding sources. A big portion of the joint training facility came from the penny sales tax referendum that the county initiated. So whether or not there will be a future opportunity for that, we don't know. That remains to be seen. That was a big part of it. Then the Parks Bond Fund, and then we had one-time funding. Gaines Park, we started out at one amount that was budget. That project came in about $5 million over budget. So fortunately, we had the one-time funding program in place where we had the ability to backfill that gap so that that project proceeded. When you look at Coleman Park, that project had a $1.5 million gap from the park bonds funds. Fortunately, again, we had the one-time funding program in place, so we were able to backfill the $1.5 million gap. And I think those two examples are important to keep top of mind, because if you were to establish a budget for a new building today, by the time we get to bid, most likely construction costs have increased, and so you're looking at a higher amount. So if we took what we had that it will cost today, if you did present value of what it's going to be 5 or 10 years, that's going to put you closer to that number. So there is a lot that has to go into planning, financing, and then building a building. And Mayor, I'll turn it back over to the board.
All right, other questions? Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Warren.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I missed agenda review, but I read the transcript today, and I appreciate all my colleagues' comments. I think they were well thought out, and I also appreciate the time, Administrator Johnson, you and Chief Araujo spent going over this item with me. You mentioned in the beginning a lot of other F resolutions, and I just want to clarify. You mentioned $25 million and $11.4 million. One was from October. I'm pretty sure I know what that was, and I can't remember what the 11.4 was. What were those for?
The $26.5 million was a myriad of projects that we brought before the board in work session. Okay. So for that fiscal year, we had about $30.7 million of one-time funding from prior year unused money, and that was the year we had a significant amount of earned interest income. So we had a litany of different projects that were included in that $26.5 million, separate in addition to police funding, and it was the same thing for the $11.4 million. Because we were now in the process of having one-time funding, departments were bringing forward items that were needed but had not been funded before. So I'll give you some examples. We had like the bomb unit was one of the PD items. that we included. We had the mobile command center, which was just under $1 million. They were using a vehicle that had expired, I think it was back from 2004. So they were operating on a 20-year vehicle. We're trying to keep it operating. It was costing more in repairs, but we didn't have a program in place. So there was just a litany of projects. I can close my eyes from one department to another if I had the list in front of me. In fact, I do have the list, but I won't read all of them.
I appreciate
but
that.
I'll take any other questions.
Well, I'd follow up, Mayor, sorry, just because the question, I think you answered it when you mentioned workshop. Because for the $700,000, we had a workshop. I think that the difference, because I feel like this started off with almost a lecture of all the other items we've brought on the F resolution and consent. And I think that my biggest concern with this and why I was asking questions and why from the transcript that I read while my colleagues were asking questions, because where was our workshop on following up on this? I mean, we've known about this issues with the mold. We've heard about it. We've seen, we've heard things directly from the police about it and different opinions of what actually needs to get done. But when you're following up with a $13 million request, why didn't administration think it was prudent to maybe sit us all down in a workshop so that we could discuss and we could have a proper discussion on this, and maybe it wouldn't lead to this presentation that we had tonight or a lot of the questions that my colleagues had in the agenda review?
In terms of having a workshop on the additional $13.4 million, certainly that could have been done. Commissioner Ward, it's just, probably a matter of, from my perspective, not needing to do a work session for the continuation of a project that was ongoing. So that could be remiss on my part, but certainly that is one way it could have been done. This is the way that it's, being done. And quite frankly, I am always happy to answer the questions of the board or to do a presentation. I'm sort of a creature of habit, so the F resolution process is set, and that's what I follow. But when the board wants to deviate from that and do what we're doing, that's fine.
All right. Commissioner Warren.
Thank you. I'd like to start out by saying that I support rehabilitation and remediation, and I do believe that that is likely the best route forward. I think that it's extremely important. I know that water damage, moisture damage, mold are hazardous, and we need to do everything that we can to step in. I support the replacement of the equipment, and that's been in the police department, because we know that when you have moisture damage and spores can get on equipment, in addition to the damage from the water itself, there are just a lot of things that would make it prudent to remove all of that equipment and replace it with new equipment. I am appreciative of an implementation plan. I'm aware that we did not have one historically, and that we have been looking at ways to ensure that we have replacement vehicles, that we have replacement equipment, that we have inspection of property, that there are procedures and policies that are put in place after storms to ensure that all of the buildings are in stable condition. So I appreciate all of that, as well as the directive of the mayor to have the entire building tested. I think that those are very important points. I am disappointed that the key questions did not contain questions that I asked during my telephone conversations and during the agenda review. I think that it's extremely important for us to look at the amount of money that's being spent and whether or not there are other resources that are available for us to look into for support, instead of the depletion of the city's funds. Have we, and I'm asking this question again, which organizations or funding sources have we looked into from the federal government, from the state government, on any other level that could assist us during this process, because we have now been aware for some time that this work needed to be done. What process have we put in place? What do we anticipate looking at as we look at these improvements over time that we know are necessary? Are there any other agencies, considering the fact that we provide support when when the president is in town, that we provide services to support the president? That there are many different times in agencies. FEMA, are there different things at the state level? When I just went to Tallahassee last week and we looked at legislative priorities, this was not something that was on the list of priorities to ask for appropriations for. We could look at appropriations and our local senator and representative and see if there's any way that they can help move some things forward, because we are the largest city in the county. We are the city where we know that a lot of emergency operations come from. What can we look at for other agencies to support this? And what is our plan moving forward? And I have not received any response to my questions about where we stand fiscally, because the comments have been made that we anticipate that there will be additional costs. And I think that that's fair to assume. So if we're anticipating that at some point in time there will be additional costs, then we should anticipate who we can partner with if in fact there is an opportunity. And if not, then let's discuss that as well, so that for my edification, I know that we have exhausted everything and we are not utilizing funds that may be needed somewhere else.
I certainly didn't intend to minimize the commissioners who raised questions that I did not include as part of the presentation. There were a total of 8 questions. I put 4 up. I sent the questions and answers to commissioners. And correct my memory if I articulated incorrectly, because I don't have the list of questions in front of me. But based on memory, your question was whether or not there were grant funds that could be used toward this project. And the answer to that question was no, or is no, because as I am aware of, and in talking with the staff, there are no known grants that provide funding for ongoing upkeep and maintenance of a municipal facility. We're talking about PD in this particular instance. And in terms of the relevance of that question to the decision before the board, I viewed that question, and I stand to be corrected, I viewed that question as going to the time frame that we would need down the road. If we were looking at grants, if we were looking at including it in our legislative agenda for funding from the state, or if there's an opportunity for funding from the federal government, that will come down the road. You don't identify a grant today and then you get the grant funding tomorrow, if you will. So if we identify grant opportunities, that's a process. And in between that time, we still have to remediate the building and get them back in there. So if that were an oversight on my part for not recognizing that that should be considered a key question, it was just a matter of perspective for me that that question really was germane to the heart of the matter before the board tonight, which is a timing issue that has to be dealt with as we speak. And securing grant funds are not going to help us with what we have to address right now.
Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner?
I'd like to hear from Jose Luis.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Jose Luis Rodriguez, Assistant City Administrator. Just to draw an additional point on, in addition to what Ms. Johnson said during our conversation where you had asked about that question, one of the sub-questions that you had asked was, well, what about FEMA or, for mold damage remediation? The issue that we have here is that we wouldn't qualify for anything like that because FEMA grants are for damage caused by storms. So water damage because we neglected maintenance in a building or didn't do preventative maintenance in a building, even for something that specifically allows you to address water damage would not qualify. So just wanted to draw an additional point.
Well, on that additional point, let's be clear that FEMA dollars are not set up where you just go and apply for them. There has to be a declaration where you then are, based on damages and all, you can apply to have, to get reimbursement. But even with that, you have to put out the money first. And then if it is deemed eligible for reimbursement after you go through the FEMA process, you get reimbursed.
For the record, in your memo to me and the commissioners dated January 16th at 1:37 p.m., the question that you answered, can grants be used to pay for this remediation reconstruction work? The answer was no. Staff is not aware of any available grants for routine repairs and maintenance of city facilities. So you did answer that question directly the day after agenda review. All right, Commissioner Fox.
Thank you so much. I do tonight because it's important for our residents to be able to be a part of this, participate in seeing how their tax dollars are being used. I guess I have a comment, but I want to ask a question first, and it is there a ceiling that you would anticipate that you would tell us if you heard tonight that the ceiling for this project was going to be X, that would be too much? That would be the amount that you would come here and say, we should look at other alternatives?
Off the top of my head, I would say no. I would say no. And here's why. Because regardless of what that ceiling may happen to be, we don't have, let me stop personalizing it because it's not Administrator Johnson's PD operation. It belongs to the city. The city does not have alternate facilities to put the staff in to continue operating the police department. We don't have it. So my recommendation would still be that we complete the remediation and not leave that building in a state of being 35% completed, and then we put them in this long-term relocation posture while we come up with the plan over whatever number of years. I would be before you asking for whatever that amount is, contingent upon I have identified it in the budget. I'm never gonna come before this body and ask you to approve a dollar amount that has not been identified in the budget. So whatever that ceiling is, if I've identified funding in the budget, by all means, I would be standing right in this position asking you for approval of it.
Do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Thank you for that very candid answer. And that is what I'm afraid of tonight, because we're looking at a building that is 35 years old, that was built before Hurricane Andrew new code standards were put in place. It is a Category 2 rated building. So I think that the fact that we have mold, that might be the least of our worries. To think this building is going to last another 20 to 30 years, let's just assume all the remediation works, like the other issues. Now we're looking at Category 6 hurricanes that exist, and this building is not something we should be throwing money away. We should be investing in the future. I don't want to keep passing the buck that the next commission will have to deal with. For me, I think no matter whether we decide tonight to just continue the remediation or to try to think about another plan, we shouldn't have anyone working in this building to begin with. So just starting right there, I think we should be looking for temporary space for another year for this plan, or more, or a couple of years for a new building. And let's just assume that is going to be a cost that we have to look for, because although it's uncomfortable, it is not comfortable for the people working in this building right now and the more than 100 people that have already filed health complaints. So I think we need to start thinking about that as well. I have been thinking about other options, as we talked about in agenda review. You wanted us to come with other things that we could talk about. I mean, obviously selling this building we could be selling this building and getting the money right away. I think that we could find a developer easily to do that. If that wasn't enough, maybe we could speak to the fund and see if there's some kind of capital campaign to raise the additional dollars. I'm sure we live in a very wealthy community that loves our officers. I'm sure somebody would love to have their name on the outside of that building. We have a president that lives basically across a couple miles away, and we are the backup, and we will continue to be after he's out of office. Maybe there is some kind of federal options that we can look into. We keep talking about potentially buying the Salvation Army land for $10 million. Whether or not a new facility goes on there, there is a building there. That building could probably be used for temporary headquarters. I think that there are a lot of options if we wanted to actually consider options. Tonight, you don't want us to consider those options because you only have one thing in mind. And so I feel like it's not really fair for the residents of this community that are basically looking at what's happening here, that we're only being given one option tonight when there are many, if we want to take the time to actually explore them. So I fear that this 20 million is only the beginning, and so there is no way that I can support this tonight. I have all the faith in the world in our police department. I trust our chief, and I have heard what you said, but I feel like this is just not the best use of our funds.
I need to make one I need to make one point of correction. One point of correction about your statement, Commissioner Fox, that I don't want you all to consider other options. That is unequivocally untrue. This board, as the policymaking body of the commission and of the city, has every right. And as your professionally trained administrator, I fully respect that right of the board to consider every conceivable option. What I have requested before the board is what I view as the best option for the city at the point that we are in, so that we can have a fully functioning department while we go through the planning of all those various options. Every option that you mention takes time. And so the board needs to decide, if you explore all of those options, what do we do in the interim with the PD? If it's the pleasure of the board that we furlough them long-term in temporary locations so that you can explore all of the various options, that's marching orders. That's how we proceed starting tomorrow. But it's not because I don't want this board to consider other options.
Go back to slide 13. That's the other option right there. Now, I need to address a couple of comments that may have been throwaway comments, but I don't want to go unchallenged. One is that we're throwing away money. This $12.9 million is not throwing away money. Go to slide 11, Ms. Johnson. I don't know what construction expertise you have, Commissioner Fox. This note at the bottom, I don't think can be ignored. You may quibble with the 20 to 30, say it's 10 to 15, say it's 5 to 10. Again, I don't know what construction expertise you have to question that, but say it's 5 to 10. Investing $12.9 million additional dollars, even if it goes up some, to extend the life of the building, and then go to that very next slide, in order to maintain efficient police department operation. That is the question we're confronted with today. What do we need to do today? Not 6 months from now, not next year. Listen, this is the police, this is the West Palm Beach Police Department. This is public safety. I campaigned on public safety is job number one. We cannot hamstring our police department and tie one hand behind their back and expect them to do their job efficiently and effectively. What we're trying to do is get them to the point where they can operate efficiently and effectively to protect the citizens of our city. This is not a situation where maybe we could do something with the Salvation Army or what. Come on. The only other option that has been available, and the subject matter expert has said it, go back to the previous slide, is to shut down what we're doing now, figure out, that's not the slide I wanted. What is the slide that said the other option? Not approved, this one here. This is the option. Shut it down now, all right? Mothball the building. Don't spend the $12.9 million, we gotta spend $500,000, and just scratch our heads and try to figure out and try to identify another potential source, whether Salvation Army or putting a bid out for a developer to come in and write us this huge check, or even go into the fund and say, fund, can you give us the money? As she said, if the fund came in tonight and said, I'll give you 80 million, whatever it is, 40 million, to build you a new police station. You don't wave a magic wand and you got a new police station overnight. We got to plan it, and then we got to build it. Meanwhile, how is our police department operating effectively in the short term? All right? That is the question that is before this body. I'm not happy with the amount either, okay? What I'm less happy about is risking that these fine men and women in blue who put their lives on the line each and every day on behalf of our citizens don't have an effective location in which to operate. I would be embarrassed as a mayor if I didn't do everything I could to get them back in that building as soon as possible. I'm not gonna sit here and speculate about what might happen or who might come in through the door and give us the money for a building and then we gotta plan it. Come on, people. Let's be real. We have an immediate need. To use a healthcare analogy, the patient is bleeding out. We have to stop the bleeding. Whatever is necessary, whatever money is necessary to stop the bleeding and get our men and women in blue back in that department to operate efficiently, that's what we need to do. Now, we can have conversations after the fact about what's the best use, highest use of the land, et cetera. But at the end of the day, the question before us now, ladies, because I'm the only man up here, question before us now, ladies, is what do we need to do in order to get our department back in there to operate effectively and efficiently on behalf of the citizens of this city? That's it. That's the simple question. If you have two options that are time sensitive, now there are a number of options if you're talking about a hope and a prayer, all right? I'm talking about realistic options before us today. We either continue to work or we don't continue to work. And another misfact is these hundreds of people who have health complaints. Jose Luis, can you explain to the public the difference between filing a what's it called?
A notice of injury?
Notice of injury, and that is not a complaint. But walk us through that, because that's not a health complaint. But please, workman's comp. There's a workman's comp process. There may have been 100 or so workman's comp paperwork filled out, but walk us through the process, because I don't like having misfacts spoken from this dais, and it's starting to happen too much. Please.
In terms of what I can say, I will say I can't get into too many details because this is workers' comp.
Just the process in generic terms.
Which is health. But basically, any employee at any time, if they have a concern about their workspace, or they have a concern, or they have an actual injury, it doesn't matter whether it's a concern and you think you may have been injured or you may have been damaged, or it's an actual injury, there's a process where you file a notice of injury with the risk management division, and that goes through the workers' comp process. And then that's just a notice that there's an employee concern, either that they think that they may have had an issue that they want us to put us on notice of, or they in fact had an injury. For example, you fall down the stairs while working, you file a notice of injury. And then what happens from that point forward is that if there is an actual injury and if there is medical treatment necessary, then that gets processed on a case-by-case basis. But just the filing of a notice of injury form with the risk management division itself doesn't mean that there is a medical issue. That is a further down the line. If there is a medical issue, then that gets processed through workers' comp. But it's basically you're putting your employer on notice of a concern.
Don't go anywhere, because you missed a key step in that process. And if I'm articulating it incorrectly, please correct me. My understanding of our process is they file that notice and then they are directed to go to their medical provider and then they get a determination.
Yes, if you go beyond just the notice of injury, in that form, the employee is asked a question: are you seeking medical treatment? Or is this just a notice only? And don't quote me on the exact language, but it's roughly that. The employee then has the option of saying, no, this is a notice only, I'm not seeking medical treatment, or yes, I believe I have a concern or an injury and I'm seeking medical treatment. And then if you check that option, then the city, as part of the workers' comp process, ensures that you have medical treatment, and if there's anything that needs to be addressed to ensure that whatever concern you have, medical issue you have, is addressed, is done through the workers' comp process.
And it is possible that people are cleared to go back to work.
Correct.
All right?
Correct.
And we can't, because of HIPAA reasons, we can't give numbers, but I think it's safe to say that there have been far less than hundreds of people who have not returned to work. So to suggest that no one should be in that building when we test every 2 weeks for air quality. And since December, air quality has been 100%. To suggest that people shouldn't be in the building at all is absolutely false. There's been no determination that that building is not safe for people to work in. And I challenge anyone to present me with data that says that building is not safe. We're testing the air quality. It's coming back 100% normal, and we will continue to test it. And I'm sending notices out. Commissioners, you get notices from the city administrator as to the results of those tests. So don't sit here and say that that building is not safe for people to work in. If you're entitled to your opinion, but not to your facts. And we're going to deal with facts up here in order to make a decision. Commissioner Ward.
I didn't hear that as workers' comp, but I am curious how many people have filed, but I don't think that is what, and Commissioner Fox, you can speak for yourself, I don't think that's what you were trying to say. Chief Araujo, I appreciate you so much. Ever since you've showed up to this police department, you've wanted people to check you wanted studies done, you are doing exactly what you should be doing, and I feel like you've been put in an awkward position because you're doing what you should be doing, and we're all now being presented with a lot of dollars in front of us when we've heard issues with this building for a while. And I'm sitting here trying to understand how it is that we're continuing to say that this is the only option. Of course, because we're at a deadline here. We haven't been doing anything for years. We haven't looked at it. And so now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we gotta do this because we can't operate in a police building. When I know a lot of the people sitting up here with me have been here for years and heard about it, heard about a gun range not working, an evidence room, mold issues, leaking on the roof. So my question to you is, do we usually wait for department heads like this new chief to let us know about building issues, or do we have staff or best practices that we follow to ensure that this type of thing right now that's happening does not happen?
We didn't wait until this new chief, and I agree with your accolades about the chief. The chief was not here when this issue was brought to administration's attention. Now, I may have had my head buried in the sand on a number of other issues, so I was not privy to all of the other things that you just articulated that was being heard for years about mold in the building or any other damage within the building. The first time that issues or concerns about the roof leaks, water damage, potential mold that was brought to my attention was in fiscal year 24. And so we immediately began to address that. Do we have a process in place? It is that annual process, but if there is a pressing issue that a department brings forward, then we will take that issue out of sync in terms of the annual process and address it immediately.
God bless you, Chief. You are wonderful. But as Ms. Johnson said, these problems came to our attention fiscal year 24. Now, the problems that existed prior to that, prior to me becoming mayor. But unlike predecessors, I didn't just paint over the mold and pretended it didn't exist. We took steps, and as one of the slides showed, I insisted that we test the whole building to make sure that as we are doing work, let's do it. Not just a one-off, not just patching, but let's get to the root of the problem, which is what my administration has been doing. You had a follow-up?
The comment that Commissioner Fox made about it being only certified for a level 2 hurricane, I didn't know that. Is that accurate, and is that normal for a police building to, or are we really expecting, hey, you know what, after this, we have to do some hurricane upgrades, which is extremely expensive as well? Does anybody know the answer to that?
We can get that answer and get back to you. I don't know.
Do you have something to say?
I was just going to answer Commissioner Ward's question in terms of, do we have a process? Yes, we do. We have a new facilities maintenance division manager for city facilities as part of the Public Works Department, and we have a new facilities superintendent that is housed in the police department for their maintenance needs. And they are working together in a collaborative manner, and they now have regular inspections of the roof, regular inspections of the AC, the plumbing when there's a concern. So you do have that process to ensure and checklists to ensure that we don't get back to where to this position where we are today, that because of lack of maintenance and lack of preventative maintenance specifically, we're in this situation.
And again, the point tonight is not to point fingers about the past, it's to figure out how do we move forward in the future to give our police department facilities in which they can operate effectively and efficiently and on an expedited basis. President Lambert.
Thank you. I think that the frustration that administration is feeling, whether that's tonight or at the workshop, at the agenda review last week is, Commissioner Ward, you hit the nail on the head. I think that it was lack of information. And as we're getting a lot more information now, as I mentioned in my comment earlier, I feel more comfortable with it, but I think that it takes time for us to be able to process this information. This is $20 million in all, and a comment that it could be more, and to an amount that we don't know what that ceiling will be. And so having the ability to digest that would be appreciated in the future, and in hindsight would have been extremely appreciated in this situation as well. I understand the comparison and the request for the $13.4 million now versus the $12.9 that it would cost to relocate us. And quite frankly, I gotta believe it might even be more than that, knowing what it would take to set up everything that you showed me and that we're all familiar with to keep our city safe. However, I am wholeheartedly in favor of reviewing the options, and I've heard everybody who's presented today say we're not trying to hide options, so we just need an ability to move forward. And so if we move forward with this as our, whether it's our temporary or our permanent for 10, 20, or 30 years, I want to make sure that we have a conversation moving forward about what are our options, because I think Commissioner Fox has done a lot of research and mentioned a number of places and options. I'd love to hear and us to have an open dialogue on what is the viability of those options. And so that in our agenda review, I did ask the question, and I appreciate this being listed in your Q&A that you sent out, Administrator Johnson. This was a summary of my question about the PD building and land being considered in the downtown master plan, and the answer was simply no, it is not. However, I went back and looked at the downtown master plan, and I do believe that that area is being considered for upzoning, as it and other government buildings in that area are being looked at for underutilization. And so I think that this warrants a future conversation.
Well, fine. As I mentioned at the agenda review, we can have that conversation. You want us to hire, we can hire a consultant to advise us, because I don't think anyone up here has that expertise. And so, yeah, we can begin that process of looking at, you guys tell us what the questions are you want the consultant to consider, highest and best use of the land, because I think part of that is also going to be what the police department under the chief's leadership, what they are looking for in a building. I mean, there are a number of factors that go into that kind of analysis, but we're happy to undertake it at the appropriate time. What I'm hoping to do is get some kind of decision so we can move forward. Some might say there's a deadline. Yes, there's a deadline, because I've got many members of the department that are not able to operate in that building. And as I said earlier, I wish that we didn't have to be here to consider a $13 million request. But it is what it is. And so, unfortunately, in this business, you're confronted with unpleasant facts, and you have to make hard decisions. And I understand that this is not an easy decision, but it's a necessary decision. Commissioner Ward.
Do we have a representative from Belfour, or the contractor performing the work, here tonight?
We do not.
Who gave you that stat on the slide about the 20 to 30 years on 13 or previous, the life of the building?
We looked at the warranty on the roof. That's a 10-year, but then in terms of the interior, we are essentially rebuilding the walls and what have you, flooring. The building is 31 years old, so it has survived for 30 years. When you look at that, it's going to be probably 70% rebuilt. That's how we got to an approximate 20 to 30 years. We've already had, from the original construction, of about 30 years in the building. We're now putting in new walls and all within 70% of the building. So that's what we're basing the 20 to 30 years projection on.
Follow up?
Yes.
And that, the roof, could you go back to 10? So I'm still sticking with that whole hurricane level 2 comment that has me concerned because, I would assume that if we're doing HVAC, exterior waterproofing, painting, so is it a new roof or is it fixing, with the sealant on it?
Jose Luis Rodriguez again, Assistant City Administrator. The roof has already been fixed.
Okay.
So under the original, the $700,000 that the commission first approved, and then the additional $6 million, there was enough money in those two buckets of money that any areas of the roof that needed to be repaired were repaired. There were some areas that needed to be replaced in total, and those areas were replaced new. And then on top of that, what we did is that we sealed the roof with that protective coating to keep it weatherproof, moisture intrusion proof, and waterproof. And that warranty is for 10 years. So in terms of the roof, there won't be anything new that is needed in that roof unless, of course, something happens tomorrow and you fix it. So the weatherproofing, exterior weatherproofing and painting that you see there is things like cracks around the windows that you need to rip off the old silicone sealant and put the new one. If there happens to be a crack or something on the wall that is found, exterior wall, you seal that. So that's what that money is going towards. And that's very similar to what was done in City Hall. I believe it was over the last prior 24 months, you saw scaffolding around City Hall, and that's what they were doing. They were checking every window to seal any place where moisture intrusion can come in. So that's what that work is for.
One more follow-up.
Yes.
So there's a limitation when you're gutting an entire property, for instance. Sometimes you have to put it back to updated codes. Is that what we're doing in this instance? Is that required? So if we had to remove the roof and put it back, you'd have new codes. If you remove completely to the studs, you got to follow new codes. Is that what's happening here, or is it patching?
No, when we are rebuilding, whenever you do roof work, and I'm not an expert in building codes, but when you do a new roof, even if it's a partial new roof, my understanding is that it's got to be to the current code. You can't build it or repair it to the old code. Similarly, interior, you have to make sure that when you're putting the sheetrock back up, the electrical back up, all of that has to be up to current codes because you're basically tearing everything down.
Okay,
you're just not fixing a little hole like you do at home when you hang a picture frame. You're not just fixing that, but that is my understanding of how the process works, and that factors into if 70% of the interior of the building is going to be brand new walls, brand new flooring in the areas that are affected, you should get at least another, let's just say mid-range for argument's sake, you should get at least another 20 years of life out of it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I have another question.
Yes.
Chief, how much growth can that building have? We've already added, the last couple of fiscal years, more police officers, and we're hoping to continue. Obviously, we're a growing city. So how much room for growth is in that building?
Well, the growth has come in patrol, and patrol is only there for a minute. It's not like they're in the building their entire shift. The opportunity this remediation has also presented us at no cost is to go ahead and redesign some of the spaces to give us more room. And then the ability, when we get our new furniture, the ergonomics, the engineering of spacing is much better. But I just want to offer one perspective. I went through this at my former employer. Okay, that building was built in 1982, headquarters. It just went through a full remodel. I'd venture to say that that building is going to be good, knowing the county and our former administrator, Virginia Baker, that I worked with very closely. That building's going to be there for 50 years. And then the other thing, there are police buildings right now in this state that are Category 2 or 3 or 4. That changes. There'll be a Category 6 or 7 before we know it. And what do? Every time there's another category? No, you don't operate that way. But for the last time, and again, I would not put anybody, to include the mayor and this administration, but your police chief would not put anybody in harm's way in that building. I'm there. And if the air quality, for whatever reason, failed, we'd have a fire drill in the parking lot. That's not the case. The best interest of every employee, service delivery, continuity of delivery. At the sheriff's office, before we killed this switch, we turned one on and made sure the breaker didn't go off. It was tens of millions of dollars to have a planned redistricting. And that's having a COOP plan of a lot of other facilities and redundancy. Moving forward in whatever strategic plan we plan for the city in the years and decades ahead, as the mayor has said, that's a discussion to be had. But right now, as your police chief, I implore you to approve this.
Yes.
The reason I asked that is because I know that there was discussion in agenda review and now about a 5 to 10 year. And my concern with that is, why would we even talk about that after this if we are spending over 10 million just now, 20 million total on this building? If I'm going to approve this, I want to make sure that this is the home for, let's just say 20, don't even go 30, 20 more years for our police department. I don't want to have a discussion about 5 years from now if this goes forward.
Again, we're talking about the future. Is it fair to say downtown is going to get even more compacted? More spaces, in, out, all that stuff in the future. We should explore the possibility of Precinct 1 and Precinct 2, the South Precinct, a Northwest Precinct, and that gives us opportunity for growth, future annexations, and all the above. And again, I haven't discussed it with the city administrator. We do talk strategy every time we meet, but when we build the new facility, the training facility, could that be an opportunity to build a precinct out there? It could be, but that requires planning, strategy. But again, as a city in the future, in my opinion, if the mayor was to ask me right now, I think a Precinct 1 and a Precinct 2, along with this headquarters, would do it.
But you wouldn't want to get rid of the headquarters even with substations like you're talking about.
Well, it's not about matter of getting rid of headquarters. I mean, if you tell me right now, as everybody said, a new building today, my wife wants a new car tonight, but I've got a plan for that. So again, this is the best option we have, Commissioner. I'm telling you the best from my experiences on the ground, continuity of service. It's a large building. We can make it work. We've even talked about future garage space. We're so ahead of the game, even when it comes to that. So again, I can assure you that building, the functionality of it and whatnot will be here decades to come. And as we need more space, we can build a Precinct 1 and a Precinct 2. And again, future discussions, planning, funding, as everything the city administrator did, which is at the other place, 10 years in the making to plan something like this.
Thank you.
Any other questions? President Lambert.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief, for bringing up the ideas of North and South precincts, as well as the training facility. And I appreciated our conversation on that last week. Administrator Johnson, Mayor, I would like to request that in the near future, we could have a workshop on the training facility, as it looks like, we're pretty close to breaking ground based on your previous slide on that timeline. And I'd just like to make sure we're up to date and aware of that. Thank you.
It's fine. Any other questions from the dais? All right, we do have one card. Michael Cleveland.
Good evening, Michael Cleveland, and thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, staff. I think we're all pretty intelligent, but I did hear very clearly that Administrator said that this is the only option on the table now. The other option you're talking about is going to take money, and there is no money to do it. So I understand all the questions, and I'm happy that the mayor came to her defense. which she didn't have to. She speaks for herself. I have questions, 3 of them, if you will. What would a new, brand new, state-of-the-art police facility cost, and where would you put it? Also, what type of walls do the current police station have? Are they masonry CMU blocks? Are they prefab slabs, or is a solid concrete wall poured? Very important. I was going to ask if they had a facilities manager, but the gentleman answered that question a few minutes ago. Thank you. Listen, that's important.
All right, any other, I don't think we have any other cards, so any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 26-26F.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none? Yes.
The discussion point is I know that there's hesitation. I'm moving forward with this because I don't want to ruin the continuity of service. I'm still extraordinarily frustrated by the process that this came to us, and I just hope that it's a learning lesson, that more communication with us, discussion, being allowed. We cannot speak to each other. I don't know all their questions. Agenda review is helpful. Workshops are helpful. We can be on the same team. If we're provided with information, we can even help, just like Commissioner Fox was trying to do, troubleshoot. It might be too late in the process right now, and it causes chuckling, but she's trying to troubleshoot. She's trying to do her job. So, again, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, I trust the chief. I know that you know budgets, and I know that you've looked at this thoroughly, but I am so disappointed in how late in the game we're gracefully brought into the conversation.
Any other comments? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you. I want to just second what Commissioner Ward said. I have full support of our police department, obviously, always. But I also think that this is a huge amount of money that really required a lot more discussion. And so for us to have been presented with this first to be on our consent agenda without even any discussion about it, it really is disappointing. And I, of course, want to move forward in the best way possible and always, but I think that this is not the best way possible. And I just would like to see more investment of this money in something that would be more high-tech and a building that is deserving of our police department for the future. But I do appreciate all of my colleagues' comments, and I appreciate the time that has been put into this, having a presentation tonight, but I still don't support this, but thank you.
All right, any other comments? All right, call the question. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All right, there's 3. All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, so 3-1. I don't have to vote because it's not a tie. Okay, thank you. Motion carries 3-1. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll now turn to item 8.2, resolution number 16-26, granting approval of the Zoological Society's request to make improvements, including approval of the improvements location and conceptual approval of the design relating to the Jaguar Trails project. Madam City Attorney.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Kimberly Rothenberg on behalf of the City of West Palm Beach, and we have with us this evening the zoo folks. We are here this evening for looking for approval of resolution number 16-26. The reason it's before you is because the city's lease with the zoo requires that all improvements done at the zoo that exceed the $5,000 range be brought to you to see before the construction can commence. With me this evening is Stacy Cohen from the Zoological Society.
Good evening, Mayor James, Commissioner Lambert, Commissioners. May it please the board. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm very grateful to be able to present Palm Beach Zoo's case for support of the Jaguar habitat renovation. Want to thank you greatly for the opportunity. Our COO, Casey Coy, really wanted to be here to present this exciting project, but unfortunately he came down with the flu, so I am privileged enough to be able to take you through this project. Our project, our Jaguar habitat expansion, has 3 goals, and the first is to improve and enhance our Jaguars' fitness and mental health. And I know that several of you have been to our new tiger habitat, and you've seen the great ramps that the tigers have to go up. You've seen the elevated pathways, and you know what? A year later, our tigers are in the best health that they've ever been before, ever. And so we want to do the same for our Jaguars. In addition, we want to enhance our guest experience. We want our guests to come into nature and stay in nature and want to be outside and enjoy the outdoors. And we can do that with this amazing renovation. Finally, we want to be able to tell our guests about our conservation story. We save jaguars in the wild, and we need to let everybody in the community and around the planet know that we are doing amazing work to help these species. Our current Mayan Plaza, where the Jaguar habitat is located in that box, and that is going to be the future Jaguar Maya Trails. It is simply a renovation within that space and within our zoo walls. The new space is largely made of elevated trails for our Jaguars. As you can see, that dotted line is the path that our Jaguars can now take or will be able to take once this renovation is completed. Their current habitat is where, if you see the B and C at the lower right-hand portion of the diagram, where it says existing Jaguar holding and existing Jaguar habitat, that is where they currently are. Now they will have the access to the entire plaza. This will afford them great complexity, and it will stimulate them, and it will provide our guests with an amazing view of our Jaguars. I'm going to take you through this path now. That is a site plan that shows the same path that the Jaguars will be taking. As you enter the plaza, you will be able to see a Jaguar, if one is in there, on the elevated pathway and heading towards its new habitat, which is currently a porcupine habitat. It is an elevated pathway that is safe for guests. Guests cannot reach it. It is 12 feet high. Even a child sitting on his dad's shoulders will not be able to reach the elevated platform. It is safe for the cats. They will be enclosed in mesh and happily wandering around our plaza and entertaining our guests. The cats are going to be able to climb 4 times the height that they can reach now, which is going to greatly enhance their well-being. They're going to be fitter than ever, and we're so excited about the mental stimulation that this is also going to provide them. The new habitat that the Jaguars will occupy, which I said earlier is currently occupied by our porcupines, is going to afford them a second night house, so there'll be 2 indoor spaces that they'll be able to go to. They will have 3 yards to occupy now. It's a more than 50% expansion of their space that they have now to wander about and exercise and explore. This is a rendering of what the new habitat could look like, with Jaguars entertaining our guests and walking around the entire plaza. The most exciting part of our renovation is the caracol, which becomes a new space for guests as well as for Jaguars. So the Jaguars are going to be able to come into this space, which is currently closed to our guests and has been for several years. There is glass there. Don't think that Jaguar can just come right out into the building. He can't. So there is going to be an experience for guests to become nose to whisker with the Jaguars and really get a sense of what a Jaguar is and be able to understand the story of our conservation, which will also be displayed in the Caracol through projection mapping. So we'll get to tell this story about how we save jaguars in the wild and why we're taking such good care of our jaguars, and hopefully this will inspire people to take action on behalf of wildlife. Continuing along the path that the jaguar will take, the jaguar can get on top of the Caracol building that people can go into. And the jaguar will also be going over our current squirrel monkey habitat. Now, there will be a barrier between the squirrel monkeys and the jaguar. They won't be able to see each other, so the squirrel monkeys aren't going to be frightened all the time. But it will provide the jaguar with more space to explore. And the jaguar will also go on top of our faux fig tree that we have. It is a very high tree. It's probably 18, 20 feet high, and the jaguar will be way up top and then can go back into the original habitat that we had created for it. And this is the jaguar on top of the Caracol. If you come to the zoo, we're hoping that this is where the jaguar will hang out. We're planning to put a cooling rock there, so it'll be a nice cool spot for the jaguar to be. So now you know where to look when you come to the zoo. I know that there are probably several questions that you have. One of them is probably, when does construction start? It begins in mid-April, and we intend to have the construction completed by mid-September and open to the public in November. We also want you to know that the entire site will be closed to the public during construction. It is the fastest way for us to construct it and the cheapest way for us to construct it, saving us money and hopefully giving that money back to conservation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions? Commissioner Warren?
I'd just like to thank you for the work that you do, and I really enjoyed the tiger ribbon cutting. It was tremendous. I should have planned my day better and had some time set aside to hang out more at the zoo, but the children had such an amazing time. It was wonderful to see them engaging. I did feel that one of the tigers was sizing me up behind the little clear glass thing, but I felt protected. But it was such an amazing space, and I love seeing just the freedom that the tigers had to roam, and I'm looking forward to coming out and joining you again and spending some more time with you.
Well, we would love to have you, Commissioner Warren. It was
Thank you.
Very nice of you to come to our tiger opening. We appreciated it, and you'll get the same with the jaguars.
Great. Thank you.
And Commissioner Ward?
I wanted to say thank you as well, as somebody who's spent some time with my daughter watching and waiting for jaguars to be seen or find them behind a tree or on the existing Mayan wall. I'm looking forward to going and visiting with my daughter. Where are they going to be housed while you guys do construction?
That's a great question. We have expanded the back of house portion of our existing jaguar habitat, and that is where they'll be housed during the construction. And we are very conscious of their health and well-being. We use monitors that tell us how loud things are and make sure that, and we have constantly people going through to make sure the jaguars are calm and collected and okay. If we do need to move them because of any stress that they're experiencing due to construction, we will move them.
Thank you.
President Lambert?
Thank you. I also agree with my colleagues. We love visiting the zoo, so grateful that you're there. Thank you so much. I think first and foremost, I appreciate your commitment to conservation and education in our community. I think it's interesting that this is on our agenda, and so I'm appreciative of the opportunity to reflect on it. I think the second thing, as a city commission who's looking over this, appreciating that you're bringing entertainment and education to visitors and residents. But the third item is where I'm leading with my question, which is about safety and just making sure while we're providing conservation, education, and entertainment, that we're making sure it's the most safe environment possible so that they don't go and jump through that glass at my colleague. Can you tell us just a little bit about, the associations that you might be a part of that helps to certify, whether it's you or your construction company that's putting this together to ensure the safety of the guests?
So there are regulations that we have to abide by, from the USDA to the Florida Wildlife Commission, Conservation Commission. All of them have regulations that we have to abide by, including things from the strength of the mesh that we use to the strength of the glass to how much space an animal needs. So all of those items are regulated, and these plans will have to be approved by also our through permitting, and those rules will apply. And when the permit is approved, that will mean that we have adhered to all of the regulations related to mesh and strength and heights that we're allowed to have. We can't have the Jaguar pathways, elevated pathways, lower than 12 feet because we can't risk somebody getting up there and messing with our Jaguars or getting hurt because of that. And so all of these things are regulated, and when we are permitted, that means it's a check mark on all of those regulations.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the dais? Okay, we do have two cards, Kathleen Breland and Stacy Cohen.
That was me.
Oh, that's you, okay.
And her
Kathleen Breland? Oh, you're just in case. Okay, well, all right. It's good to be prepared. All right, if there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, move approval of resolution number 16-26.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.3, resolution number 27-26, consenting to the installation of improvements within a public right-of-way located along North Flagler Drive between 40th and 41st Street, along with the maintenance agreement between the city and RSBC Parcels LLC for ongoing maintenance of the site for a period of 10 years.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Armando Fana, Assistant City Administrator. I'm going to transition from Jaguar habitats to human habitats. We have a lot of exciting things going on in the north end of the city, and one of those, as you have seen in previous presentations and previous commission meetings, there are single-family homes being built in the area between 40th Street and around 45th Street, with the ones that are just starting now are on 40th Street. And then we have the Marina project that was also recently approved. So a lot of activity happening in this particular area of North Flagler. And so the developers have proposed to improve one of our green spaces that is located between 40th and 41st Street. It's about a little bit over a quarter of an acre. And essentially what is there now is a parking lot, as you'll see there in the picture, as well as a flagpole and a memorial to 9/11 and some just green space. So the developer is proposing enhancing that green space with including some additional amenities like a children's play area, which doesn't exist there now, new lighting, new landscaping, and then also having a new memorial, a new 9/11 memorial, replacing the existing flagpole, and just having a much nicer space than what we have there currently. And they're also proposing to provide the maintenance of that space, which is currently being maintained by the city. They'll be privately maintained, although the space will be open to the public, but privately maintained for at least the next 10 years. So it's a burden that the city doesn't have to take on at this moment. This is the existing condition when looking north from 40th Street, just to give you kind of an idea. And there you'll see like what the proposed new look would be. As you can see, a lot more landscaping. You'll see at the bottom right there also the children's play area that would be protected, and as I mentioned before, new memorial, new landscaping, new lighting, a much nicer experience for the residents of that area. And then, as I mentioned, it'll be open to the public. So that's it in a nutshell. It's a short presentation. We do have representatives of the development team here in case you have any additional questions that are specific to what's going to be on the site, but I'm happy to take any questions now.
Very good. Thank you for that presentation. Any questions? President Lambert.
Thank you. I'm always appreciative for a public-private partnership when we can have public space that's maintained by a private entity, so thank you so much for that partnership. You mentioned that it will be maintained for at least the next 10 years. What happens at the end of the 10 years?
Well, the agreement will be for 10 years, but that doesn't mean we can't come back after that and discuss additional time. But as I mentioned, we're maintaining it now, so it's going to be newer landscaping and newer equipment that's there. The stuff that's there now has probably been there for many decades. So even if we did have to take the maintenance responsibilities after 10 years, it'll be a much easier maintenance than we have currently.
Okay, and then I presume that we have some sort of tracking in place where we'll track so that in year 11 we don't find ourselves in a place where we forgot that we have to maintain this and now we've got a budget for it and we forgot to budget for it.
Yes, that's a good question because that was the case in the past. We do now have, as we do the land management, which currently falls under housing community development, they have a database now that tracks the time that leases are up. So
great, thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Do you have any cards? No. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of resolution number 27-26.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fano. Item 9.1, public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 5151-25, approving an agreement granting the Northwood Road height incentive under the CMUD zoning and land development regulations, providing for the exchange of portions of certain land parcels for the roadway, approving the abandonment of Lake Road, Kent Terrace, and portions of Bethesda Terrace, and accepting the developer contribution for the construction of Northwood Road. Ms. Urchek.
Nancy Urchek, Deputy City Attorney, here to present the ordinance 5151-26, actually, on the Northwood Road extension. When the city first decided to rebuild Curry Park and rehabilitate it, there was always a planning idea or concept that it would be a great idea to extend Northwood Road into the new entrance of Curry Park for access, to make it seem more accessible to people. So at the time, the Curry Park mixed-use zoning regulations, CMUD regulations, were amended to include an incentive, sorry, so that a property owner would convey land to the city for the development of Northwood Road, and along with a payment of $6 million would receive a bonus height incentive, which would be able to increase their standard height of 111 feet to 350 feet for the properties right along the new roadway extension. The city's objectives in doing this was not only, to provide better access to Curry Park, but the incentive was so that we could extend the roadway without an expenditure of city funds. Plus, the $6 million would be to obtain the funding for the design and the construction of the roadway, again, so that the city didn't have to come out of pocket for that. And the planning idea was to create a linear park then from Joel Daves Park to Curry Park. So it'd be a linear park that would go across that. The developer that actually owns the property that needed to be conveyed to the city is the developer, Jeffrey Green. City staff and his representatives have sort of been negotiating an agreement for some time, but just really couldn't come to terms that both achieved the city's objectives and were satisfactory to the developer. The mayor recently sat down himself with Mr. Green and have come up with terms that both meet the city's objectives and are agreeable to Mr. Green. And those agreement terms are these. There'd be basically an exchange of property. Mr. Green would convey city land for the roadway extension and the linear park. I will show you these to you on a map in the next slide. The city will convey a portion of Joel Daves Park to the developer. He'll pay the $6 million for the design and construction of the roadway. He'll get his Northwood Height extension for his 2 properties as provided in the zoning regs. We'll give them final site plan approval. They recently received special review, previously received special review. They'd have their vested rights for those properties for 15 years. We would abandon portions of Bethesda Terrace, not the Ponce de Leon intersection, but portions of Bethesda Terrace, and we would also abandon Kent Terrace and Lake Place. So let me show you those on the map. I don't know if my pointer doesn't go up there. So the red is what would be the new Northwood Road extension. Mr. Green would also convey to the city the land to the south. I'm talking about the parcel on the right-hand side. The left-hand parcel is Joel Days Park. On the right-hand side, the property for the roadway and south would be conveyed to the city. Bethesda Road would be abandoned, so he would be able to combine those 2 pieces and have a larger plot of land there, and that would be able to have the bonus height incentive. The land from Joel Days Park all the way beneath the Northwood Road extension would become the linear park. So it would be going from a piece of what is still a Joel Days Park all the way across to Curry Park as a linear park. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you talking north or south? You're talking the south portion underneath? That's going to be the linear park?
Yes.
Next to 23rd?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, the south portion underneath the red Northwood Road extension, that would be the linear park all the way across. The north half, Bethesda Road would be abandoned, and that would remain the developers, and he'd be able to construct the higher property on there. He also owns the property underneath 23rd Street. And that parcel would also gain the height incentive. So those 2 parcels would get the bonus height incentive.
And I have a question as well. So, and I just want to make sure I understand. So the just below, just south of Northwood Road extension between Flagler and Ponce de Leon, that would then be conveyed to the city?
Yes.
And we would leave that as a park, as green space?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Now, up by 27th Street would also, the Kent Terrace and the Lake Place would also be abandoned. The developer owns the properties on both sides of Kent Terrace, including the blue that it goes underneath Lake Place. So those would be abandoned and allow him also the opportunity to develop both that parcel as one larger parcel in the future. The roadway abandonments, all of them, Bethesda, Kent, and Lake Place. Signs were posted 30 days in advance as required under our code. Individual notices were mailed to property owners within 400 feet. We've met all the notice requirements. The abandonments meet the criteria in the city code. They're consistent with the comprehensive plan. They don't impact property rights. There's no real alternatives. Traffic circulation, these are tertiary roads. They don't have a lot of traffic on them anyway. Golf Road, there'll be sufficient room for vehicles and the garbage trucks to turn around. This really doesn't have any impact on pedestrian or vehicle safety, municipal services. Utilities, there are utilities in Kent and Lake Terrace, but those would remain for now, and the city would get an easement to keep those utilities in place for now. Property values, it'll impact to the developers' property values, but otherwise not really impact any other neighborhood property values. So Ordinance 5151 accepts the property from the developer for the Northwood Road extension, declares that portion of Joel Days Park, it's really a third of an acre approximately, portion as surplus, approves the conveyance to the developer, releases all of the mineral rights, waives the requirement for appraisals for this conveyance, waives the timing requirements for the execution of an agreement. There was timing requirements in the ordinance. Requires the developer, of course, to pay the $6 million, grants him the incentives for the height for his 2 parcels, approves the abandonments of the portions of Bethesda Terrace and for Kent Terrace and Lake Place, and retains the utility easement in Kent Terrace and Lake Place. Timelines, if this is approved going forward, The second reading of this ordinance would be on February 2nd. There's 30 days for the ordinance to be effective, so we would probably be looking at the property exchange and the payments in March. Engineering is actually already looking at preparing a RFQ for a consultant to design the roadway, which they'd hope to be able to do in April. Getting a consultant under contract hopefully in June. Design completed by next February and ITB out by next March. Roadway finally in place by June of 2028. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. And I remember this, I think I was on planning board coming before us, but what were the differences between what was approved originally in the CMUD revisions and what we're approving now? Like for the height, his height incentives?
No, we're complying with the CMUD.
So nothing changed?
No, the CMUD allowed, if the developer gave us the property and paid the $6 million, it'd be able to go from 111 feet to 350 feet. That's what we're doing.
Okay, so the road abandonments were contemplated as well?
No, the roadway abandonments were not contemplated.
So that's the difference?
But had been part of the discussion for quite some time.
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure I communicate what the differences are, just because the community has cared about this so much that I can tell them, hey, this has been the plan.
The developers conveying 0.8 of an acre, a little bit more than 0.8 of an acre. We're conveying for the part of Joel Days Park is 0.3, just a little bit more than 0.3. So he's giving us more property than we're giving back to him. Okay. Follow up.
Yes.
And as far as the $6 million towards design and construction, have we had someone review what the soft and hard costs are going to be? And do we feel like that's going to be sufficient cost?
Yes, engineering services took it, reviewed it. We had an outside consultant take it and review it, and they engineering has said that yes, that's a reasonable amount.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
The developer's attorney, Amanda Han, is here if there's any questions for them.
Any questions for the developer? We do have one card, Steve Simpson.
Commissioners, Mayor, thank you for your service. Yeah, my name is Steve Simpson. I actually, I live at 2201 South Olive and here in West Palm, but I own two of the properties on Gulf Road. So I'm a little concerned about the value when you say there's not going to be any impact on the value of that street. We were, as the one of, I guess there's 7 of us, 8 of us, we've met, and I don't think there's any kind of a plan for what we're going to do there or what the developer plans on doing. I think we're a little concerned about Gulf Road being a dead-end street. The developer, I hate using that term for him, that he has a large pile of trash that's been at the end of Gulf Road, I think for at least 7-8 months. I've been screaming almost daily with the city to have somebody come and pick it up or get him to take care of it. It just keeps getting larger and larger and larger. He doesn't care about Gulf Road at all. I'm worried that when this plan is presented, that Gulf Road becomes maybe the back way where the dumpsters do come and access the rear of one of his buildings. We are losing our pathway to Flagler. I think we're a little concerned about that. We would love to be able to still walk to the new park without having to go back out to Point Siena and around. So I understand this is way down the road, but I do think we need to pay attention to that little street. The zoning is very favorable for us to do something really cool there as well. My 2 properties I can build 85 feet without a waiver or variance. So with some really interesting zoning. So that can be a little jewel that I just think we have to pay attention to. So I'm asking for when the time comes that we do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of ordinance number 5151-25 on first reading and schedule second reading for the February 2, 2026 City Commission meeting.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second, but I do have a comment as well.
Okay, discussion.
Thank you. Yes, point of discussion. I'm in favor of this, but would just like it if we could ask staff to look into the pile of trash that's at the end of Gulf Road. I'd like to make sure that gets taken care of. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Ward?
I was just going to add that that's kind of why I was talking about the road and the abandonment, and if we could have that just to continue consideration of making sure that traffic and garbage collection, things like that, that we have a plan for that, and potential pedestrian access, because that's a very good point. They're kind of cut off now from that area. Thank you.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. There's no other discussion. Madam Clerk, can you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 515125, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, authorizing the conveyance of city property along North Dixie Highway and 23rd Street in exchange for property along Flagler Drive so that Northwood Road can be extended to Curry Park, accepting the conveyance of a portion of the property at 2323 North Flagler Drive, vacating and abandoning portions of Bethesda Terrace and all of Kentwood Terrace and Lake Place, granting the Northwood height bonus to specified properties, approving a covenant running with the land for the extension of Northwood Road between 1031 South Booster Limited, 2104 Cahuenga Partners LP, Little Broad Beach Partners LP, 6622 Hollywood Boulevard Partners LP, 920 North Stanley Partners LLC, 2111 Flagler LLC, and the City of West Palm Beach, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, item 9.2 has been continued. So we'll now turn to the quasi-judicial portion of the meeting. So, Commissioners, I need you to make your disclosures, please. And we'll begin with Commissioner Warren.
Thank you, Mayor. As to matters 10.1 and 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications, not received written communications, not conducted an investigation, not made a site visit, not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Commissioner Ward.
As to matters 10.1 and 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications, have not received written communications, have not conducted an investigation, have not made a site visit, have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
President Lambert.
Thank you. As to items 10.1 and 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
Commissioner Fox.
As to items 10.1 and 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I have not conducted an investigation. I have not made a site visit. I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record.
And since I may have to vote in the event of a tie, I'll make my declaration. As to items 10.1 and 10.2, I have not had ex parte communications. I have not received written communications. I'm not conducting an investigation. I have not made a site visit, and I have not received expert opinions. I request that these disclosures and all written communications be made part of the record. Madam Clerk, can you swear in all witnesses, please?
Would everyone wishing to speak on items 10.1 and 10.2 please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10.1, public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 5163-26 for the rezoning of the Gateway Center CPD, generally located at 1100 Banyan Boulevard, from a commercial plan development CPD zoning district to Clear Lake District 25, CLD 25, in the downtown master plan. This request was submitted by Harvey E. Oyer, III of Shelton Bowen, LLP, on behalf of 1100 Banyan, LLC.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Meredith Lay with Shelton Bowen here on behalf of the applicant to bring forward a rezoning application for the Gateway Center CPD. Is it going to be on this? I'm sorry. Pardon me. The request before you this evening is to simply rezone the commercial plan development to Clear Lake District, which is located here on the corner of Australian Avenue and Banyan Boulevard. It's the current WPB-TV TV station. It's got a 2-story building with satellite dishes. It's a TV station with a helipad and on top of a parking garage. It's been there since the late 1990s. It was originally approved as a PD in 1980. Nothing really happened for a while, and then in 1997, this TV station was approved for the site. The current development is a 73,000 square foot building. The planned development approval allows for up to 80,000 square feet. And as you know, in the Clear Lake District, currently the maximum for the downtown master plan development regulations would allow you 7.0 FAR and up to 25 stories. So what we have here in the plan development regulations is inconsistent with what the current code will allow. The current code also would not allow for a plan development to exceed its previously approved boundaries. So what we have here is what we would get unless we were to rezone. It's important to note, though, that currently there is no development application along with this rezoning. It is simply to kind of lay the groundwork for the potential future redevelopment of the site. As you see in the zoning map here, with the exception of a couple years ago, we brought forward the rezoning of 400 and 450 South Australian, which is the larger 2 parcels on the south end of Clearwater Park, and South Australian Avenue. The rest of it has already become Clear Lake District, and so this one would follow in that path of the rezoning we brought you a couple of years ago. This would effectively abandon the plan development regulations, and so any future development that does come forward would have to comply with the current code. And this is what the map would look like after the rezoning. It complies with the comprehensive plan. It would comply with the current or adopted zoning and land development regulations. The Clear Lake District zoning district is consistent with the existing future land use designation, of course. And this kind of follows the path, or would complement or lay the groundwork to have complementary developments to what's already happening in this neighborhood, like the Berkeley residences, Lumiere residences, which was recently opened, the Cleveland Clinic Hospital, which would go on those 2 parcels at 400 and 450 South Australian, and then also the Vanderbilt campus, of course. As far as what recommendations, where we have been and where we're going, this has been before the Downtown Action Committee in November, and also in the Planning Board in November, where we received unanimous recommendations of approval. Staff recommends approval of the request as well, and so from you, we also recommend approval. This is the first reading. The second reading will be, I believe, first week in February. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Any questions for the applicant before we bring staff up? Okay.
Thank you.
Hearing none, staff.
Good evening, Commissioners and Mayor. Trying to find my presentation. My name is Claudio Aben. I am the City Urban Designer in the Planning Division. I'm going to try to skip some information that you already heard from the applicant, one of them being the location where this rezoning request is, and also the fact that this plan development has been there for a very long time and prior to the downtown master plan regulations, and what we have in that particular lot right now. Now, the city has always left the option of abandoning or keeping the plan development to property owners. In this case, the property owner is coming with abandoning that plan development. We, as the Downtown Master Plan regulations, already analyzed this particular area to see what will be the appropriate zoning district for this, which will be the Clear Lake District 25. This is also consistent with the comp plan, which does call out the plan developments. If they are abandoned, they can follow the zoning districts, which is the Clear Lake District 25. This is just a map showing you where this is located in the actual Clear Lake District, which everything is in green. Now, a rezoning request usually comes forward with the city with a site plan approval. At this moment, the applicant or the property owner is not proposing any particular development in this location. The other departments in the city have reviewed this with the assumption of what could be the potential maximum development capacity in this district, and also have studied some existing impacts in the infrastructure. But in any future development that comes through, we'll have to follow the requirements for any development, and we'll also have to include any studies related to the existing water and wastewater systems. It will also need to comply with any requirements related to the traffic impact studies that the city engineer might need, and also we'll also need to coordinate with the city's parking mobility administrator in regard to any projects that are part of the 2025 mobility plan that are nearby this location. As the applicant mentioned, this was heard, this was in front of the Downtown Action Committee in November, and also Planning Board, and was recommended approval. Staff does recommend approval ordinance number 5163-26, based on the findings that the proposed rezoning complies with all the amendment standards found in section 9432 of the zoning and land development regulations. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Any questions for staff? All right, any cards on this? All right, if there's no other questions, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 5163-26 on first reading and schedule second reading for February 2nd, 2026 for a request to abandon the planned development status of the Gateway Center and formally adopt the existing DMP zoning district. This motion is based upon the application submitted, the staff report, factual testimony, the recommendation of the Planning Board, and the findings that the proposed rezoning complies with all the amendment standards found in section 94-32 of the zoning and land development regulations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. Madam Clerk, can you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 5163-26, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of West Palm Beach, Florida, rezoning the Gateway Center located generally at 1100 Banyan Boulevard from a commercial plan development CPD zoning district to Clear Lake District 25, COD 25, subdistrict in the Downtown Master Plan, DMP, declaring this rezoning to be consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city, providing a conflicts clause and a severability clause, providing an effective date, and for other purposes.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.2, public hearing of resolution number 7-26 regarding a request by Roger Ramdeen of Schutz & Bowen on behalf of C Block Development LLC for the approval of a major plan development PD amendment to amend the waivers approved as part of the Level 3 site plan approved by resolution number 18-24 for the development of two primarily office towers at 550 South Rosemary Avenue within the City Place East sub-area of the City Place Commercial Plan Development. The amended waivers are to permit greater than 60% of the facade without a planar break on the western tower along South Rosemary Avenue and to reduce the amount of required active use along Hibiscus Street and Gardenia Street.
One second, I'm just looking for the PowerPoint presentation.
Do we have IT assistance?
It's open on there, it's up here. Should be up here. This one? Is that one right there? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and members of the Commission. For the record, Roger Ramdeen with the Office of Schutz & Bowen here on behalf of the applicant. Before you tonight, what I have for you is a request for a major amendment. It's to amend some waivers for the 1015 City Place project located at the intersection of Hibiscus and Rosemary. You may be familiar with the project. It was last approved back in 2024. It's two Class A buildings, two towers for Class A office space with a 6-level parking garage and some ground level open space. As part of that approval, you granted 6 waivers, and I am here tonight on behalf of the applicant to amend 3 of those waivers, which I'll go through here. So the first waiver is to allow an increase in the continuous building frontage, which is the planar breaks. The code currently requires a 60%, and we want 77%. Waivers 2 and 3 is more mathematical in nature. What we had requested was for a 26% reduction, and at the construction stage, come to discover that it's actually 25.7. So rounding up did not pay off in the end. This is the overall site plan showing the 2 towers in this location. And I'll get into the waivers. So maybe I'll just jump ahead to the 2 side-by-sides. So on the tops of the screen, you'll see where our current planar breaks are approved for, the yellow rectangles at the top of the screen. And the proposed is a slight reduction, and that occurs mainly on the inside floor plan of the building. What this looks like to the general public, you'll see no difference. It's more or less to save space on the inside because it works better with the floor plan. The current architectural design kind of has a bump out into the spaces of the office spaces, so this reduces that. And as it relates to the waivers 2 and 3, like I mentioned before, it was just a matter of rounding up. When we requested our initial waivers, we asked for 26%, and we're actually at 25.7 to be exact. So because it was approved at 26, we have to re-request a waiver to be exact at 25.7. An additional change that occurred on these levels that prompted this amendment to the waiver was also a change to the floor plan where we're actually proposing some additional parking spaces, and that kind of affected our active use on those levels as well. The minimum depth for an active use liner is 20 feet, and the area shown here in green, even though it is active use, it falls below the 20-foot minimum. So we have to ask for that amendment to the waiver here as well. This is just conceptual. Sorry, I don't have a better picture, but this is what we had to show the existing and the proposed. The active use is actually at the corner, where you see proposed. The mouse doesn't show on the screen, but it's mid-picture, the little platform that goes out. No other changes are proposed as part of the same waivers 2 and 3. That was the only change, it's just the discrepancy. With that, we do have to demonstrate compliance with the code, sections 9432A. We believe we comply with all the standards, and staff concurs. This application was considered by the Planning Board on October 21st. Planning Board recommended unanimous approval. Staff does recommend approval, and we are respectfully requesting your approval of this amendment to the waivers. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have as it relates to these waivers.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant before we bring up staff? Okay, Mr. Schneider.
Good evening. For the record, Eric Schneider, Principal Planner, and that could have been one of the most boring, confusing minutiae that you may have ever had up here. As the applicant said, staff reviewed this. This really came up in building permit, or we wouldn't be here if they'd have realized this 2 years ago. It would have been covered then. Staff does not oppose what they're doing. It does meet all of the criteria in the code, as the applicant showed on the screen and is in your backup material. The Planning Board also did recommend approval. Are there any questions of staff?
Any questions of staff? All right, hearing none. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 7-26. This motion is based upon the application submitted, the staff report, factual testimony, the recommendation of the Planning Board, and the findings that the request complies with the comprehensive plan and with the standards in section 94-32 of the city zoning and land development regulations.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll now go to item 11.1. I'm going to read this, and then maybe, Madam City Attorney, you can go over the standards. 11.1, appeal by Circuit Transit, Inc. regarding denial of protest of intent to award request for proposal 24.25.220 SS term contract for transit management services, rebid to Tidewater Transit LLC. Madam City Attorney?
Yes, so we are here this morning, or this afternoon,
Evening.
late in the evening, hearing a protest. The section of the code that's applicable is section 66-151, and it provides the right to protest, and it's intended only to remedy procedural or legal errors committed during the procurement solicitation, which, if corrected, would result in the selection of a person or entity filing the protest. You are the body who hears appeals of the decisions primarily made by the procurement official regarding this protest. Your review is limited to the record relied on by the procurement official in denial of the protest that was attached to the agenda item and provided to you for review before this evening. Tonight, you will determine whether there were procedural or legal errors identified which would result in the approval of the protest or whether the denial of the protest should stand. You may not take into consideration any new information not contained in the record that is presented by either side in its argument this evening. As it relates to legal errors, you will hear argument of both sides and make your decision based on those arguments. As it relates to procedural errors, you will hear argument and review the record to determine whether the argument is supported by substantial, competent evidence necessary to determine whether there was a procedural error. Substantial competent evidence is evidence which a reasonable person would rely on to form a decision. Each side will be given 8 minutes to present their argument. This is a use it or lose it allotted time. At the conclusion, the board may have some discussion, and following that discussion, when the clocks are reset, each side will have 2 minutes for rebuttal and to answer any of the board concerns, followed by additional discussion if necessary and questions and answers as you see fit. The protesters will present first, followed by the city in both the 8-minute section and the 2-minute section. After having heard argument and having reviewed the record, you will vote to determine whether to approve or reject the denial of the protest. Following your vote, the mayor will execute a writing memorializing the vote, which will then be filed with the clerk.
Okay, any questions for the city attorney before we proceed? All right, Madam City Attorney, I'm going to kind of let you run this portion because you'll.
Okay.
Time
So
is-
at this time, if the protester, the person who's going to present first, steps up to the podium, announce your name, and then commence your argument.
Great. My name is Alex Esposito. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Circuit. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, President Lambert, fellow commissioners. My name is Alex Esposito. Again, I'm the CEO of Circuit. I'm also a resident of West Palm Beach. For over 10 years, my team and I have had the privilege of serving this community. We employ dozens of local drivers. We move hundreds of thousands of passengers. We form local partnerships with groups like Rose Trolley, and we deliver a program that riders use and rely on. We're here tonight because we believe the most recent RFP was decided through a process that was materially flawed. Circuit operates in over 40 cities and has worked on about 100 public procurements, and we've never once protested a bid until now. I understand your role tonight is to not rescore proposals. Your role is to approve or reject the procurement official's denial of our protest based on the record. And the city code makes it clear that the protest process exists to remedy procedural or legal errors that impacted the outcome. What matters here is that the denial letter does not address the core issue raised in our protest. We documented specific factual misstatements made on the record about service hours, value, and readiness that directly influence scoring. The denial does not dispute or correct those facts or explain why reliance on incorrect information would not affect the outcome. The record shows numerous problems across 3 themes. Key safeguards were removed, material facts were misstated, and scoring committee issues undermined confidence in the outcome. Imagine being a student that's applying for college. It's between you and another student, and the admissions official says, let's pick the other student because their SAT scores are higher. Then you look at the SAT scores and you realize yours are higher, but you're not allowed to correct the record. That's essentially what happened here. This is the second time these services were bid in 2025. In the first RFP, the city used a 2-step process, a written proposal followed by an oral presentation. After the written proposals, the top 3 firms got to present. Procurement circulated about a dozen questions, extended the presentation time, and included Q&A so evaluators asked questions live. We worked closely with Rose Trolley on our bid. We presented with Rose Trolley, we stood there together, we answered all the questions, and a few days later, we received a notice of intent to award as the top-ranked proposer. 5 days later, that award was rescinded due to what was described as a scrivener's error. The city then quickly rebid the contract and the cone of silence went back up, and we were unable to speak to anybody about what happened. More importantly, in the rebid, the process changed in ways that materially undermined fairness. Oral presentations and Q&A were entirely removed. Even though the committee included new evaluators, instead of increasing clarity for a partially new committee, the one mechanism that had previously ensured clarity was removed. Not only were presentations removed, vendors were not allowed to speak during the evaluation meeting, so factual errors made on the record couldn't be corrected. Unfortunately, that's what happened. During the meeting, evaluators made factual misstatements or misunderstandings about the proposals. Those were accepted by other evaluators. No vendor was given the opportunity to correct those errors, and they directly had an impact on the outcome. There were many, but a few stood out. And perhaps most importantly, service hours and value. During the recorded evaluation meeting, an evaluator stated that the recommended vendor offered the best value of all 3 proposals so far. It had the most hours, frequency, and coverage. That statement was accepted by other evaluators. Instead, this is factually wrong and misleading. The transcript shows the competitor was credited with 66,800 hours for the first year. Our proposal explicitly listed 83,515 hours. That's about 25% more service hours for less money. That's not a minor issue. That's a 7-figure issue in the first year, and there's no way for it to be corrected under the new format. Another clear example was autonomous vehicles. An evaluator stated that Circuit did not specify a timeline for AV deployment, but Circuit's proposal explicitly states that we could deploy AVs immediately, and that we previously operated the county's first autonomous vehicle right here in West Palm Beach earlier that year. There were multiple factual errors like these, which we've documented in detail, but the pattern is what matters. We also had concerns around how the evaluation committee was handled. It wasn't the same, but it also wasn't entirely new. In fact, every evaluator who previously ranked Circuit the highest was removed. One evaluator who did not remained, and another evaluator from that same department was replaced by a colleague from that same department. In addition, stakeholders like fleet management were not represented, and the Downtown Development Authority was removed entirely from the process, despite being a key stakeholder that helps fund and manage this service. So the rebid was decided by a committee with 4 new members and 1 remaining member, no oral presentations, no Q&A, no participation from a funding stakeholder. Those concerns are compounded by the scoring behavior that we saw on the record. In the first RFP, one evaluator gave the competitor a perfect score. In the rebid, a different evaluator working in the same department and the only evaluator to serve on both committees gave this competitor a perfect score. Not only did the evaluator on both committees increase the competitor's score from 90 to 100, they dropped Circuit's score from an 80 to a 59, despite Circuit submitting an improved proposal with more service hours. This creates what feels like a statistical anomaly. In public procurement, perfect scores rarely happen. We saw this happen twice. Furthermore, the 21-point drop on our score lacks a rational basis on the record. When you combine irrational scoring swings, removal of presentations, removal of evaluators who'd previously scored Circuit and Rose highest, replacement with departmental colleagues, inclusion of a supervisor and a subordinate which compromises independence, the result is a process that creates reasonable perception of partiality. Whether intentional or not, The city's procurement code is designed to prevent even the appearance of unfairness. Unfortunately, based on this record, that standard was not met. The recordings of these meetings underscores why these safeguards matter. Finally, the record shows evaluators introduced outside information not found in the proposals. For example, during evaluations, wait times from our current temporary fixed route pilot were compared against proposed future state solutions. This is an apples to oranges comparison. This is exactly why oral presentations are standard. Without them, there's no way to distinguish between the actual proposal and unverified assumptions. Commissioners, this appeal is not whether you like Circuit or Rose or another company. It's not about the companies at all. It's about whether the city and its residents can trust a process that produce a recommendation and the procurement's officials' denial of our protest. Based on the record, the denial should not stand. West Palm Beach is built something valuable. We're proud of the work we've done here. We want to keep doing it, but above all, we want the city to make a decision that is fair, transparent, and based on facts. So our request is respectful and simple. Grant the appeal and send this back for reevaluation that restores oral presentations. The decision is about an investment worth tens of millions of dollars, and it's being decided by a process where not one person was able to ask a single question of the vendors. Mobility is the core of many of the city's plans, and we welcome the Commission's involvement in this. Thank you for your time, thank you for your service, and thank you for your commitment to doing this the right way. West Palm Beach deserves a process and a result that it can trust. Thanks.
Okay, very good, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Donna Levengood, Procurement Official for the City of West Palm Beach. Before I address the points of Circuit's protest, I want to point out the RFP language on page 14.
Could you speak closer to the mic, please?
Certainly, thank you. I want to point out the established RFP and evaluation criteria and best value language that's stated on page 14 of the RFP. Best value means overall value to the city and the city's sole discretion as determined by considering the evaluation factors and selection criteria set forth in the RFP and in accordance with section 6671 of the city code. This is the evaluation criteria and maximum points that were used by the evaluation committee when ranking and scoring each of the proposals. I will speak to the point that this gentleman just made. During an evaluation meeting, the public and proposers are not allowed to speak. They are there to observe and listen. It is a matter of procedure and policy which was followed. Section 66-151A of the City Code of Ordinances provides the right to protest is intended only to remedy legal or procedural errors committed during the procurement solicitation process, which, if corrected, would result in the selection of the person or entity filing the protest. I will review each of Circuit's protest and why the review of the record, I found no procedural or legal errors were committed, resulting in the decision to deny Circuit's protest of award to Transit LLC. Circuit claims there was unequal treatment of comparable strengths and incorrect assignment of strength because the selection committee spoke about Tidewater's willingness to work with Rose Trolley. Based on a review of the record, I found no indication that the committee evaluated Circuit differently than Tidewater, and no procedural or legal error was committed. Circuit claims the scores by Veronica Altuve were irrational because her scores for Circuit were different from the first to the second RFP. Scoring proposals differently does not mean there was irrational scoring and does not mean there was a legal or procedural error. Proposals are scored individually and in the context of all other proposals. On the first RFP, there were 5 proposals. On the second RFP, there were 3 proposals. I found no legal or procedural error because Ms. Altuve changed her scoring. If we remove Veronica Altuve's scores, the total combined score of the evaluation committee, the outcome and ranking does not change. Tidewater Transit remains ranked number 1 with a total score of 374, and Circuit Transit remains ranked with a total score of 330. Circuit claims 3 out of the 5 members of the selection committee from the prior RFP that favored Circuit were replaced, but Ms. Altuve, who did not score Circuit higher than Tidewater, was not replaced. The city does not base replacement of evaluation committee members on how they scored proposers on the previous RFP. Evaluation members are selected based on their areas of expertise, objectivity, and availability. The city replaced 4 out of the 5 members of the committee from the prior RFP, and the city has the right to identify and select evaluation committee members. Based on the review of the record, I find no legal or procedural error. And again, if you remove the score of Ms. Altuve, the outcome does not change and Tidewater is still ranked number 1. Circuit claims Ms. Keller had personal favoritism and bias for Tidewater, which influenced engineering department staff that served on the evaluation committee for the reissued RFP. Ms. Keller did not serve on the selection committee for RFP 220, and I found no evidence that Ms. Keller improperly influenced any of the members of the evaluation and selection committee, and based on the review of the record, I found no legal or procedural error. While the city does not agree with Transit's claims, if we remove the scores of the 2 engineering staff members, Circuit claims were unduly influenced, Kevin Volbrack and Veronica Altuve. Tidewater, again, remains the first-ranked proposer with a total score of 276, and Circuit is second-ranked with a total score of 260. Circuit claims the elimination of the presentation component is a substantive deficiency, which undermined the objectivity and arbitrarily impacted the evaluation scores. Page 22 of the RFP states the city has the sole right to determine whether to have firms make a presentation before the evaluation and selection committee. No legal or procedural error was committed by not having a presentation. Circuit claims there was reliance on information outside the record. And material factual misstatements because the committee discussed fixed service routes, wait times, and other related topics. One mentioned a Go Glades program, and discussion by the committee or discussion of their understanding of the proposals does not mean that they don't rely on or that they rely on information outside of the proposals when scoring, outside the record when scoring the proposals. City Code Section 6671.8 allows for consideration of proposers' past performance with the city and others. Based on the record, I found the evaluation committee scored proposals based on the established RFP criteria in accordance with RFP and city code, and I did not find any procedural or legal errors. Circuit claims Tidewater may be non-responsive because they relied on experience of their parent company VIA. Tidewater's parent company VIA's experience was properly considered in the procurement process in accordance with Florida law. Tidewater is a wholly owned subsidiary of VIA Transportation, and Tidewater's leadership positions will be staffed by VIA's management. By asserting that Tidewater should have received lower scores because of Tidewater's corporate identity, Circuit is attempting to substitute their opinion for that of the Evaluation and Selection Committee, which is not permissible. And I found no legal or procedural error. I do have Kevin O'Brien from the City Attorney's Office here if you have any questions regarding that. So in conclusion, based on a review of the protest of the record, I found no legal or procedural errors were committed during the solicitation process. The evaluation and scoring of the proposals was in accordance with the established RFP criteria based on the evaluation committee's understanding of the proposals that were submitted. And while the city does not agree with Circuit's claims, even after eliminating the scores of the engineering staff that allegedly scored irrationally or were biased, does not result in the selection of the entity filing the protest. Tidewater remains the highest scored and first-ranked proposer representing the best value to the city, and accordingly, the protest was denied.
At this time, if the board desires to discuss, you can. Otherwise, we'll wait for the clock to reset for the 2-minute rebuttal, and you can have questions at that time.
Commissioner Ward.
Can I understand what constitutes a procedural issue?
A particular procedure of the code or the RFP itself wasn't followed in having or their meetings or the selection meetings, so that we failed to follow something that was otherwise required.
Follow up?
Yes.
So stating one procedure in the bid and then changing a part of that bid, that wouldn't constitute changing a procedure and having potential issues with that when it comes to the oral presentations and the Q&A?
Yeah. Are you talking about
establishing a procedure initially in a bid? So establishing
rebid itself. The rebid is the controlling document. The original bid document is no longer what the procurement is operating under. You have to operate under the document that you issue that everyone responds to and understands what the rules of the bid and the document require. So no, the original outline of the procedure doesn't follow to a rebid. The purpose of the rebid is to create a process that's supposed to be followed for that particular selection.
Any other questions before we go to rebuttal? Okay. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay.
City Attorney.
We have the times reset. If Circuit would like to present their 2 minutes of rebuttal, now is the time.
Thank you again, commissioners. I think the argument about the score differentials is irrelevant because our argument is that the scores were influenced by misstatements of facts that are on the record. There was a meeting where those facts couldn't be corrected. Also, this was a rebid, and the removal of the presentation process was a surprise to many of us. And if you listen to the recording of the original evaluation meeting, which everyone should, it becomes very clear that all the evaluators said how important the presentation was to clarify that. Procurement extended our time the first time for the procurement and asked us 12 questions, and all of the vendors 12 questions before we started. Yet, abruptly, the second time there was a decision made that a presentation wasn't useful. I can't imagine spending $40 million of public money without there being any Q&A or any presentation. The last point that I'd like to make is that the departments, having two people from the same department and one's a subordinate, and if you look at the differences in the scoring between, by taking out that department, you'll see there's a much wider spread than there are with the other evaluators in there. So there were so many points throughout this process that, I'm sorry, I want to give Victoria a couple seconds.
Victoria Mendez on behalf of Circuit. The legal position that we take is based on all the irregularities, the bias indicators, the factual inconsistencies, that you as a commission do have the opportunity to send this back to the lower committee, evaluation committee, and not award today and actually grant this appeal. You do have that opportunity to do so that it is a clean process, new evaluation committee. You can even be the evaluation committee. So it was just that point that I wanted to add. Thank you.
So I will begin by saying that the presentation component, again, under 204, RFP 204 was canceled. This is a new solicitation. No presentations were made. The city decided not to have presentations, and that is why. And that does not constitute a legal or procedural error by not having a presentation. That was a conscious choice and decision. DDA is not a funding agency. DDA was replaced by Palmtran, another subject matter expert. The engineering staff manages the transportation projects for the city. Veronica Altuve is our transportation engineer. It would not make sense to not have her on the evaluation committee. And again, the evaluation committee reads and individually evaluates the proposals. Based on their understanding of the proposals, they evaluated according to the RFP criteria in accordance with our city code, and there was no legal or procedural error.
Okay. So that's the end of the presentation.
That's the end of the presentations.
All right, and we do not take public comment on this matter, right?
If you take, generally speaking, the statute allows anyone to make a comment before final action is had. But if you allow public comment, just remember, you can only base your decision on the record that was created, taking into consideration the argument, so long as the argument matches the record. But the public generally has a right to speak, so you may take public comment, but you may not consider it in your decision.
Okay, we'll have a discussion here first, and then we'll hear those again. President Lambert.
Thank you. In considering whether or not there was a procedural error, I want to dig into this question that I think Commissioner Ward was asking about earlier, which is about the oral presentations and why they and the Q&A were removed, why they would be in one but not the other. I don't think the question of why is up for discussion. It sounds like that's not something we're to consider. I guess it is just, is our procurement staff saying that that is within their scope of creating this procedure, that they can include it or not include it?
Okay. Well, all I can answer for you, because I'm advising you as the board, is what the code allows for. And our code, in the procurement code, indicates that the process and procedures to be followed for any particular solicitation will be spelled out in the solicitation documents. And you heard testimony from, or not testimony, but you heard argument from staff, and you have in your record what the RFP provided for. And that RFP and all of our RFPs that I'm aware of all say that it's at the city's sole discretion as to whether or not they will ask for presentations as part of the solicitation process. So this particular RFP is not any different probably from, well, that's again, it's not a process that is not permitted. It's within the code and it's within the solicitation document.
Was there a separate document for the rebid?
It's a new RFP. When a bid gets canceled and a new one is put out, it's a rebid of the same,
correct?
but it is a, yes, written document.
Okay, all right, okay, all right. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you. I guess I want to clarify those statements about, I mean, if there were misstatements that were made in the discussion, you know, I know that I didn't look at this bid, but I didn't look at the number of pages, but I'm assuming it was many pages. I have seen other bids before. So I can imagine if there was discussion about those bids, maybe everyone wasn't flipping back through the documents to look at the exact language of, was there 29,000 fixed rate hours or 37,000? Maybe somebody I did not see this presentation, I'm just taking what we were heard just now. But I can imagine that once it's said, then everyone thinks it's fact. Is there not an opportunity in these bid meetings to correct the record? I mean, I can't imagine how that influences a decision if the wrong information is presented, and that's what, you know, everyone took as fact to vote on. So I guess I'm just curious, is that normal that there's no opportunity to correct the record at these meetings? Thanks.
So what we're talking about is the particular protest in this case, and whether or not the numbers that were given to you by circuit, if you find in the record that you have reviewed that they are material misstatements, would that be a procedural error for which you would reverse the decision of the procurement official? If you find that that is the case based on the record that you have, then you would vote in that manner.
And even though there was a discussion, there was no evidence that the discussion influence the final decision.
No, all you have is the actual scoring. The scoring cards are in your record. You can see what points were assigned based on the discussions, and your committees will have discussions. So the final scoring is what constitutes the award.
And if there were misstatements in a discussion, does that rise to a procedural or a legal error?
And the information that you received from staff was no, they found no procedural or legal error. I'm only here to give you
No.
answer
I
questions.
wasn't asking
Yeah,
you to
just
define. I'm just
right.
saying in my mind, that's really the question.
Right.
Even though there may have been factual misstatements, allegedly, and there was a discussion, does the mere fact that there might have been factual misstatements rise to the level of a procedural or legal?
That would change the outcome, too.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's the standard.
Commissioner Warren.
I'm just struggling to understand the rationale about not having the presentations for the second bid, but I understand that that does not constitute a procedural violation, but it is just one that leaves me curious and just really wanting more information. But I don't see the procedural violation considering the portion where it says under our sole discretion. And I guess that's kind of a catch-all, but I don't know if that's one that affords fairness to the process. But I'll leave it there.
Commissioner Ward.
Mayor, I was going over the same prompt in my head, and when items are misstated at a meeting, how is that remedied? And does that constitute a procedural issue if items are misstated at a meeting, regardless of confirming whether it led to different in scoring? Do we have no obligation from a procurement side, from anywhere, to say, hey, FYI, that was a misstatement of fact? That's an issue. To me, it is a procedural issue. I mean, frankly, setting the tone of having a procurement go out and saying we are going to have presentations, we are going to have Q&A. We've been in front of them where there was presentations and Q&A on something this extravagant, not just hey, we're going out to bid for repaving a road, but something like this. To do it the first time and then not the second time, I'm well aware that they're two different bids, but you've created a pattern. And I feel like that is a procedural issue where you've created that pattern, that expectation, and then you've changed it afterwards. I do believe that's a procedural issue, on top of the misstatements not being corrected for the record, regardless of asking each committee member, separately, did that impact your scoring? I think that that's irrelevant, so we can scrap that. I see a procedural issue. I see two.
In terms of the misstatement, the fact there was a misstatement doesn't necessarily mean it would be a procedural issue if that necessarily led to how someone voted. I could hear a misstatement and not acknowledge it and ignore it when I'm doing my vote. So I don't know if that necessarily rises to a procedural issue, which is a fault in the procedure itself. As to presentation or no presentation, if the document clearly says it's the discretion of the city in that document, there shouldn't be an expectation just because we did it before, we're necessarily going to do it before. Now, because the document says the city has the discretion in this particular rebid. So I don't know, that's not a reasonable expectation. It's going to be exact, there's no pattern, that the pattern has to be followed. Commissioner President Lambert.
Thank you. Is it the procurement official who oversees the creation of the RFP, Ms. Rothenberg?
Ultimately, she reviews and signs off on every solicitation, to my knowledge, that goes out.
And then is it also the procurement official who reviews and oversees the determination if there were procedural errors?
Yes, in your code, there's the or the protest process that's set up is the first review goes to procurement official to review for the legal and procedural errors. If she denies it, then it comes to this body to make that determination. And if you all were to deny it, then their next opportunity would be at the circuit court.
It just seems like there might be a conflict there if that same official is creating the procedure and then evaluating whether or not the procedure was followed.
Well, the procedure actually was created by the code, which is created by this body. So the procurement official then is delegated the obligations in the code itself to set, to do those documents. But I mean, the broad or the overall procedure of the procurement code is set by this body, and then the solicitations are prepared by either the procurement official or her staff, but she signs off on the document ultimately.
So the procedure established in the code, and the procurement official interprets the procedure.
Interprets the code and then adopts or signs off on the solicitations. But I think that the hang up here is the procedure itself as to whether or not there will be presentations is not a procedure that's spelled out in the code. It's spelled out in the solicitation document, and the code says you follow the procurement code and everything in your solicitation document.
So it's not about following the procedure that was in the RFP, it's about following the procedure of the code.
Well, you have to follow both, yes.
Commissioner Ward.
I find that being a very conflicted statement because, yes, there's a procedure in the code, but she created the procedure that they had to follow for the solicitation, so she did create the procedure.
In every single solicitation that's issued, she ultimately signs off on them. There is a staff of people who help to draft solicitations, but yes, your procurement official signs off on all solicitations before they're published.
So when President Lambert said seems to be a conflict between the person who created the procedure for the RFP and then reviewing whether there is a procedural or legal issue, it actually does seem to be a conflict. And she, in fact, did create the procedure for this RFP. You said there that
That's
she
your
doesn't,
opinion.
so I just want to make sure.
I'm just saying we follow our code and our process, and this is just how solicitations are done. If you find a conflict with that, then you do.
I was just responding to what you said.
All right, anything else from the dais? And then we do have, all right, remind us again what the standard is before we start hearing public comment.
So the right to protest is intended only to remedy procedural or legal errors committed during the procurement solicitation, which, if corrected, would result in the selection of the person or entity filing the protest. You, as the body, hear the appeals. Your review is not, under your code, a de novo review, which would allow you to take new information, but rather it's a limited review that only allows you to look at the record that was created, and that record is attached to the agenda item and was provided to you prior to our meeting.
Okay, so we do have several cards here, so I'll read out 4 names. If you can start making your way toward the podium: Kenzie Snyder, Anthony Bennett, Jonathan Dwyer, and Brian Powell. If you want to start making your way. I'm sorry, Brian doesn't want to speak. So Tyrone Smith, Kenzie Snyder, Anthony Bennett, Jonathan Dwyer, and Tyrone Smith.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Town Council. Thanks for having me here. My name is Jonathan Dwyer. For the record, I live at 333 Fern Street here in downtown West Palm Beach. I am a local real estate agent, among other hats that I wear throughout the town. I have no vested interest in Circuit other than my vested interest in this community. As the gentleman said, this is a locally owned and operated business here in West Palm Beach, and that's something that I take pride in. As our city continues to grow and as we continue to see this amazing light shined upon here in West Palm Beach, we're getting all of these other big businesses that are coming in and doing so well and are really flourishing and helping us, our city. But I think West Palm was always, and hopefully always will be, community focused and localized. And, Circuit's been here for 10 years now. I believe 10 years, have employed hundreds of people. It's actually kind of fun watching the drivers that have been driving for them so long. They wave to you, they're polite. Many of my clients, customers, and friends use Circuit and have had nothing but great experiences with them. I am not versed in all the procedures and things that took place, but it does kind of sound like they deserve another shot at some point. There could be some things that happen, but I'm not here to speak to that. I'm really just here to speak on behalf of them in a positive light and a positive form for our community. They partner with many local businesses. They've partnered with Sunfest in the past. They've helped navigate, big events. And as we see this town continue to grow, we're seeing more events that are continuing to happen, like the festivals that we have coming up along the waterfront. Being here locally, operating here locally, being a resident here, and knowing our streets, knowing our town, and knowing our citizens, I think is very important. So again, I would just argue to hear their appeal and to take it into grave consideration. And it's a great company, and these are good people that have been here. They believe in our city, and they believe in us. So thank you.
Kinsey Snyder. Anthony Bennett. Tyrone Smith.
He's saying no.
All right, you want me to read your comments? Via transportation, here to introduce ourselves, here to answer any questions, but I guess you don't want to. Okay. A couple more cards. Daryl Young and Brian Powell. Daryl Young. I support Circuit Transit Inc. bid protest. Brian Powell, in favor of Circuit Transit, keeping my job, and other locals I believe support community, and turning to another new operator is not the solution. Okay, those are all the cards. So, Madam City Attorney, where do we go from here?
At this time, you will take a vote.
Any other discussion?
Or, yes, it looks like you may have more discussion.
Fox?
Thank you. Can you remind us what would be the next steps if we were to determine that we thought that there was an issue with this bid? We're not overturning the bid to give it to Circuit. We're saying that the bid should go back out, or what happens at that point?
One of two things would happen. It goes to the request by the proposer was that it goes back to the selection committee to be reevaluated. I don't know that necessarily that the proposers from the original bid after the notice of intent to award are still participating or not. Alternatively, the award could be given to, if you find that the procedural legal errors, if corrected, would result in the selection of the person or entity filing the protest, then you're finding that the award should be to Circuit.
Any other questions, comments? President Lambert?
I don't understand your answer. Do you mind restating that?
Yes. I mean, my first review of our code is silent as to what happens if the protest is granted, right? So there's only two things that could happen. Number one, what the request was that was made, that it goes back to a selection committee to reevaluate, requiring that, I assume, that a chance to provide presentations is given. Alternatively, if you're following the letter of the code, which says if corrected, it would result in the selection of that person or entity filing the protest, then that would mean that if you grant the protest that says there is legal and procedural errors that would result in the winning proposer not winning, that then Circuit would win the bid.
Follow up, Mayor.
Yes.
I do not like the situation that we're in. I don't think any of us want to be in this situation, and I know we have another appeal coming up next month, and I believe it might have, if my memory is correct, something to do with presentations or not presentations as well, and I just, I don't know. I just think that I don't know if this is pertinent to the decision-making process, but I feel like it would be helpful to know why we would have a presentation on the same, I know it was not the exact same RFP, but it is essentially the same program, an RFP for the same program, but then we'd have another RFP for the same program immediately following. It wasn't years later, it wasn't 100 RFPs later. It just seems like that was a procedural difference. And so I'm just trying to understand that.
And you have what our code says is that the solicitation documents together with the code have to be followed. What was pointed out by staff was that the solicitation document allowed for the city to decide whether or not to have a presentation. If you find that to be a procedural error, that's what you do, but it is permissible by the code and through the solicitation documents.
Can we determine what happens next?
I would ask that you do. If in fact you're making a motion to approve or reject and you move to approve, I would ask that the next step be outlined by you as well.
And I ask that, and I'm talking to my colleagues, because I don't like us being the selection committee if that was not the, if we are to be the selection committee, we should be from the beginning, and that should be determined. But I don't like the idea of whatever we do here then selects, because we did not hear those presentations, we did not review those documents. And so I'm very uncomfortable with if a decision we make today then selects who is going to be chosen. I don't know how everyone else feels.
Commissioner Ward?
I agree, unless we were to start back over. And frankly, I like the variety on the committees. I do think that DDA should have been on there, but that's a side comment. I agree with you that we haven't seen everything, and so to make a rash decision with this information here, I don't think there's enough information here to say it was completely, terrible, the procedure and legality, and they clearly won. I don't think that we're presented with that either. But I agree with you, like I already said, I think that there are procedural issues.
Any other comment? Commissioner Fox?
I completely agree with that as well. I would want both and all the submissions to feel like this was a fair process, rather we haven't seen anything. Well, we haven't heard any presentations because there weren't any, but I guess I would want to understand then what the next steps in our decision could be. I mean, because I feel like the fact that both of these bids had different selection committees, I don't know how that's going to be a fair process either. So, I mean, is there an option for us to be the selection committee and start over, and so that we're able to see and hear things from the beginning?
Now, under this protest, the protest is that the selection committee that was seated committed a procedural error by not following the same process as the original RFP, or I'm not sure if it was an RFP or not, but the original solicitation documents provided for. If you're finding a procedural error there, then you would move to reject the procurement official's decision, remand it back to the committee to rescore after hearing presentations.
Any other discussion? All right, is there a motion? Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to reject the procurement official's decision.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
A second with an amendment, if I could. Madam City Attorney, is that the correct procedure?
Yes, it is, and then the first would have to approve your amendment.
Okay, with the amendment to remand it back to the selection committee with presentations for reconsideration.
Do you accept the amendment?
I do.
All right, it's been moved, amended, and seconded. Any other discussion? Commissioner Ward?
I wouldn't want to assume that presentations include Q&A, so I would want that included as well. Sorry.
Presentations include what?
Q&A. I just don't know if that was part of your intent, and I just wanted to clarify that.
I'd like to re-amend my amendment to also include a question and answer section, a verbal question and answer section.
I approve.
Okay, so let's restate the motion as amended, please. Make sure everybody's on the same page.
Mayor, I move to reject the procurement official's decision and send it back to the selection committee to include presentations as well as verbal Q&A.
Second.
We're moved in second. Discussion. All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. All right. No opposition. Motion carries unanimously. All right. We'll now turn to general comment. We have a card from Michael Cleveland. Is he still here? All right. Any other cards?
No.
Okay. We'll now go to comments from the dais, beginning with you, President Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'll just, I will comment on, most recently, we had the National Battle of the Bands event. The kickoff was held in the historic Sunset Lounge. This itself was a historic event, having the HBCUs top bands compete and have their kickoff here in West Palm Beach. I think they had over 10,000 people attend the battle at FAU. It was phenomenal. I look forward to continuing to support that in the future years when it comes to Palm Beach County. Speaking of Palm Beach County, we had Palm Beach County Days in Tallahassee. It was a very productive time. I know that Commissioner Warren was there as well as many other leaders throughout the county advocating for issues that impact our city. Most notably, there was a tremendous amount of discussion related to property taxes as well as home rule and just making sure we get dollars back in our community. And then just finally ending on that yesterday was the celebration of Martin Luther King and the impacts that he's made on our community. Thank you to the Martin Luther King Coordinating Committee for putting on a tremendous breakfast, honoring leaders in our community and awarding scholarships to young people who demonstrate the values that Martin Luther King stood for. Thank you.
Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next CRA community meeting for the Historic Northwest will be Thursday, January 29th at 6 p.m. We will be hosting it at Fantasy Island Restaurant, 325 North Sepidilla Avenue. The parking will be also at Sepidilla Garage, and there will be Rose Trolley will be available to take you to the event. This is an opportunity to come hear all the things that are happening, as well as support a local business. But one of the major things that we'll be discussing, Ziskovich will be there discussing the downtown master plan for the Historic Northwest, and there are some really exciting developments that are being proposed, but also some big changes. So I hope that we will have a very robust crowd to be able to comment for probably one of the last times before it comes to us for a vote. So again, that's Thursday, January 29th at 6 p.m. at Fantasy Island Restaurant. That's all I have. Thanks.
Commissioner Warren.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to congratulate the Martin Luther King Jr. Coordinating Committee for a great and successful breakfast yesterday. And I'd like to say that their keynote speaker, Mr. Sean Pittman, did an amazing job of reiterating Dr. King's message, and a message that we need to hold near and dear to us in today's climate, that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And the theme behind the event was about building bridges, and Sean Pittman went further to talk about keeping doors open for others, which I think was an important message. January is Cervical Health Awareness Month, and it's a time to raise awareness about cervical cancer and the importance of prevention and early detection. And I hope that everyone schedules their regular cervical cancer screening or their pap smear and HPV tests with their primary caregiver, OB/GYN, as soon as possible, and have it regularly each year, so typically around the same date and time each year. And to my future husband, if you are interested in buying me a boat, I hope that you consider the Palm Beach International Boat Show. The boat show this year will be March 25th through 29th, but tomorrow there's a significant event where it's the Palm Beach International Boat Show Gives Back, where they are donating money and working with the Community Foundation to support maritime organizations and provide opportunities to children and youth and support community-based organizations that are doing things in the maritime industry. So I will be at that event tomorrow. I'm very, very proud of them. I'm happy that I've had the opportunity to meet Rena Blades, who is the director of their community and government affairs, and who was the person that I'd like to credit with taking it back to the boat show to have this type of initiative and support those community-based organizations. She's just delightful to deal with, and this particular event, they've been giving back approximately $500,000 for 3 years. So this year we'll make a giving of $1.5 million, which is tremendous. And I don't often see where people, organizations on the for-profit side, see the pure benefit to the nonprofit community to have this level of giving. And the Palm Beach International Boat Show was very receptive and forward-thinking and took action immediately to initiate this type of support. And I'd just like to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. Thanks for reminding me about that event tomorrow, Commissioner Warren. I was on the committee last year, and that was probably one of my most favorite committees, picking grants. They had great applicants, and it is a tremendous feat to have $500,000 per year for an organization like that. And I wanted to, I don't usually say this, but I was on social media and I saw a post, Florida of Tomorrow said that Stephen Ross plans waterfront private club in West Palm Beach, and it struck me because it talked about a 4-story club would rise behind the Palm Harbor Marina across from the Ben Hotel. Ground floor retail, 2 public restaurants would anchor the building with upper levels reserved for members. I'm almost positive they're talking about our property. And I don't remember that being any part of the discussion when it came to our bond or anything like that. So I was just wondering, has administration received a request from this? Do we know? Because it was on Florida Tomorrow, and it's a pretty big social platform.
It's the property that is leased to Palm Harbor.
Okay, so it's not across from Palm Harbor. It is Palm Harbor's?
Yeah, it is,
Okay.
it is Palm Harbor's. It's where the parking lot is.
Perfect. Thank you. That was all the comments I had.
All right. Briefly, early this month, Vanderbilt University held a press conference to announce that they are proceeding with a planned graduate campus in West Palm Beach. This partnership places world-class graduate education in business, data science, artificial intelligence, and engineering right here in our city. My North Star has always been building a community of opportunity for all, a city where prosperity is not concentrated in a few blocks, but shared across neighborhoods. And that's why I think this partnership is so important. Vanderbilt's presence will not only attract research and investment, but create new educational pathways and workforce development opportunities for our current residents and those who will come to call West Palm Beach home. Proud to announce that our building department has been recertified by the International Accreditation Service for the next 3 years, an honor held by only 29 building departments in the nation. This independent accreditation recognizes excellence in permitting, plan review, and inspections, and demonstrates a strong commitment to best practices and strict adherence to building codes. Being one of only 29 accredited departments in the country is a point of pride, and it reinforces the city's commitment to safe development, strong neighborhoods, and high-quality services our community relies on every day. Congratulations to the Building Services Department. I'm also proud to share that the city of West Palm Beach has been selected as one of just 10 cities nationwide to participate in a new $3 million initiative led by Harvard Kennedy School's Data Smart City Solutions and supported by the Knight Foundation. Over the next 3 years, this initiative will help cities responsibly explore how generative AI can be used to improve government efficiency, strengthen decision-making, and enhance how we engage with residents. For West Palm Beach, this is about being thoughtful and intentional with emerging technology, using innovation to better support our employees, improve access to information, and deliver high-quality service while keeping transparency, accountability, and public trust front and center. I look forward to delivering my State of the City address next week and invite our community to join me on Thursday, January 29th from 7 to 9 a.m. at the Palm Beach County Convention Center. It's an opportunity to reflect on where we've been and where we're headed together. Details and tickets are available at palmbeaches.org. That concludes my remarks for tonight. Good night, God bless you, and God bless the great city of West Palm Beach. This meeting is adjourned.